beginning of the end for you.
To the sky!
Bestowed upon you the power of the sun.
A mighty sword!
Strike while the iron's hot.
For Camelot! For Avalon!
Let the heavens rain! I am Ragnarok!
Howdy, SMITE fans, and happy Friday, and welcome to the SPL. Our second week of play is now ready to go here for the SMITE Pro League. My name is J. Mac Tucker, formally introducing you here into week number 2. We got a lot of matchups to go through, 7 more sets this week between a lot of our big teams. We got to look at some very nice matchups last week, and now we're going to take a look forward and see everything that's going to be coming out today. Before we go into talking about our first set, let me introduce who I've got with me, because it's going to be hard for me to talk about all this stuff by myself. I got Mifflin here to kind of help alleviate a little bit of the pressure here on this job. But first set of the day, we're going to have the Kings versus the Scarabs, and going to be talking a lot about these two teams, especially talking about these mid laners really in depth.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this set, J-Mac. I feel like it really is going to come down to the battle of early game control, kill control for the Solar Scarabs, or maybe just objective control, macro play. That's what the Kings would like.
That's what they would like to talk about here. I mean, just looking at the Blues Ultras graphic, we got to see a lot of what the Kings were able to do on the macro play. But before we go into that, let's show you guys everything that you can look forward to, at least for the remainder of today and tomorrow. Solar Scarabs and the Kings will be our first set of the day. Followed by that will be the Oni Warriors up against the Jade Dragons. And then tomorrow, 1 p.m., we'll kick it off with the Atlantis Leviathans and Tartarus Titans. And then the Valhalla Valkyries up against the Oni Warriors for the second match of Saturday. And then we'll still have 3 more matches to go over on Sunday. But Mifflin, going into this first matchup here, Camelot Kings and the Scarabs. Let's talk about the Kings first, because the Kings, much like the Scarabs, they're both sitting at a 1-1 record right now. Camelot Kings, with the standings here, were able to slightly edge up just because the Scarabs had the 0-2 defeat up against the Dragons. That's why Kings are just a little bit higher there. But the Kings went to all 3 games in both of their sets. They looked pretty darn good in pretty much every one of their games going through there. There was a lot of focus on the jungle last week. I think it's important that we dial in on the mid laners here, though, today. BMT has really kind of been one of those players. It took him a while before he was able to get over here. Last year was nearly into the year before we finally got to see what he could do on land. Now that he's had time on land, this is a player that's really been able to impress in his first couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think mid lane is especially one of those roles where you need to be playing on local ping. You want to be able to land these massive abilities. It's not you know, like a Guardian where you miss your taunt, you're like, okay, I can just do it again in 10 seconds. You miss an ability on mid, you miss like your massive ultimate cooldown, all of a sudden you are largely mitigated in how effective you can be in some of these team fights. So now having Big Man Tings over across the pond and back with the rest of his team, not only is he going to have an easier time just straight up playing the game, hitting his buttons and landing them, but also he's going to be improved communication skills between him and his team. He's got a more clear line of contact with what I can only assume is the life coach for the Camelot Kings. And now with that, we've already seen what it is, exactly how Big Man Tings wants to play. He's still playing Big Man Tings picks, the Agni, the Merlins of the world, the ability to just be that standard AoE mage, but also has been playing very aggressively on these picks. I mean, very often we'll see him at or at least near the front of some of these team fights, using that flicker aggressively, dashing forward on this Agni, just getting involved, almost acting as a pseudo roamer for his team at times. Keep in mind, level 11 on the screen right now, already in the duo lane. Not many mid laners in the league are making those levels of rotations. When I think of top of the league, when I think of like textbook mid laner, it's the Pauls, it's the Shintos, it's the, hey, I'm going to clear my wave, and it looks like there's a back camp up, so I'm going to go ahead and go grab that one. I'll race my jungler there. Big Man Tings, much more interested in getting involved in the fight, making sure that his team is operating. He is a selfless mid laner, almost reminiscent of what we saw from Hurrywind in years of past, just really there to put the team forward.
Well, here with the Solar Scarabs and really kind of diving here with BMT, yes, it's taken these guys quite some time to fully get themselves together. They've now had, I mean, I remember their very first week they were finally all grouped back together was during the World's Qualification Land, if I'm not mistaken. They had to go all 15 games of their set to make any kind of headway to getting into the World Championships to fight back in there. BMT, I think you're right to point out a little bit more aggressive now that he's over here on that local ping. He can finally match up with a lot of the mid laners who are already at this point. You know, yes, he's still playing his big man kind of picks. He's even still got those pocket ones. Things like the Hera, the Discordia are always things that he can kind of pop out there at any given time that he needs to note up there. on that. But going up against him is going to be Baronic on the side of the Scarabs, a player who goes for maybe a little bit less of the conventional style. We saw a lot of Hunter mids come out of Baronic last season. The Tiamat was something that he kind of went to. The Giannis is definitely one of those kind of sleeper picks that some players were even going so far as to banning away from. Mivlin, how do you kind of feel about this matchup for Baronic?
I think this is going to be a good heat check. It's not often that you get to talk about mid laners in an actual 1v1. It's more so, what are you bringing to your team? If we see Baronic go back towards this Giannis, he plays a very facilitator role. We'll try and match some of those rotations that I think Big Man Tings will be going for himself. Otherwise, I think Baronic finds himself in an interesting position that I don't know exactly what it is that he wants to do. What is it that he wants to grow into? What is it that he wants to be his style in the mid lane? Baronic screams to me a player that is still trying to establish what is going to work consistently for him. Because, sure, the Giannis is something he's very mechanically capable of playing, but that is also a pick that your team has to be capable of playing around. And it doesn't really seem like the Scarabs want to play around that mobility that Giannis affords. Instead, they'd much prefer to play through their support, Bobby, choosing the majority of their fights, or Scream just hyper-carrying some of these games. So then he goes towards things like the Tiamat, which I've considered to be the standard patented plug-and-play mid laner in SMITE right now, will fit the majority of your drafts. So I'm curious to see, maybe today or throughout the next couple of months or weeks, what it is that Baronic is trying to gear up as he lines himself up for a LAN event, as he starts to get ready for some of these playoffs. Because right now, Baronic does not scream to me a player that has a solidified identity.
So far, it seems he is kind of just following the trends. You know, oh, everybody else is doing this. I'll throw my hand in here. He's still got those couple of signature picks like the Giannis that we talked about, and what a lot of his highlights were just from that last week of play. So always keep your eyes on what this mid laner is going to be able to do here for the Solar Scarabs. But I think you're right to talk about, you know, Bobby kind of being the main facilitator for this team, and even Scream out there. I mean, Scream was Mr. 80% last year, the 80% kill participation for his team, one of the highest in the leagues.
Is that a real stat?
I believe it was. If I'm not
mistaken,
mistaken,
I was memeing when I've been calling him.
We know
80%.
that you were going the meme on there. At first, I thought you were kind of going off the original play there, but no, he was like 80% kill participation. I don't remember if it was the highest in the league at that time or one of the highest there, but I mean, Scream was active across the map everywhere here. But Coach Slaney is the one that we really want to kind of talk a little bit to, and luckily for us, we did have a nice little interview with Slaney. So we'll go ahead and throw to that interview, see what he had to say about the team.
Performance-wise, I think we obviously showed a lot of weaknesses. We made a lot of mistakes that even we wouldn't have last year. Even honestly, I think we had like the worst performance kind of in the past 2 years combined. It was kind of a mix of long breaks for us, don't usually mix well. We didn't have the best practice going in. A lot of kind of wasted scrims, people like just kind of like figuring stuff out. And then personally as well, I think I had trouble reading the meta and figuring out draft order and draft timings for things. But I think after everything this week, we've kind of like learned a lot with that. So I think going forward, it should be a bit easier. I think the Kings had a pretty shaky performance. They definitely performed better than us, but I think there were a lot of like weak points that we could like look onto. I think Genetics didn't really have the best performance, and I think as a team, the Kings usually have to have Sam performing pretty well. But overall, we have a lot of history with the Kings. Obviously, we finished 3rd, 4th with them at Worlds, so it'd be nice to like play them again, and we're kind of all good friends and we scrim each other a lot, so it's always like fun playing those guys. Biggest threat on the Kings, probably Twig. I think the way that he thinks about the game is just really special in a good kind of way. It's really hard to think about what he thinks is good. It's hard to think about how he wants to play the map, because I don't know, it's just hard to get into Ben's head kind of thing. I think Netroid is always obviously super consistent. Other than that, I think the rest of it's kind of normal. I don't think there's like any, Harry's not exactly, Variety's not exactly a hard carry player, I would say. He's just kind of like a facilitator for the team. So I think as long as we keep Ben in line and we don't let him do something too crazy for us, it should be pretty good game. I mean, realistically, looking at our performance from the past, I think it would be realistic to say it should be a 2-1 going forward. But I'd like to say that we have a good week of scrims, we have good practice, that a 2-0 should be pretty realistic for us.
Coach Slaney here on the side of the Scarabs, really talking about the biggest threat kind of being Captain Twig over in that jungle, and then Netroid, a very consistent carry on the side of the Kings, which is kind of opposite of what some of the other teams have had to say. I believe when we had the interview with the Bolts, they were saying that Genetics was one of the biggest problems to deal with on that team because he's one of the bigger minds of the team. You never know what he's going to bring out here. But talking into the jungle, I think it's right to talk about maybe 2 to 3 roles in this entirely here is Midland, we forgot to mention that Shiva is going to be available for play this week for all of these guys. And Shiva, at least in maybe some in the casual scene, some of the ranked players have been talking about it, a really potent jungler, really strong soul laner, even seeing potential hints over into that support role. But I think talking about Captain Twig and his kind of play style, this setup-oriented style of jungler, I think Shiva could be a perfect pick for him.
I think he could be, but I'm very willing to eat my words here. I'm not sure that the relative strength of Shiva is enough to knock out any of the current meta picks, right? Like, he doesn't bring more setup than Twig's Hunbots. He doesn't bring more objective-focused play than a Kleena out of the jungle. So I think that although he is strong, I'm not sure if we're going to see a whole lot of priority towards him.
Well, we'll see if we see any priority of Shiva here, at least in game number 1. Picks and bans between the Solar Scarabs and the Camelot Kings. Our first set and first game of the day here in week 2 of the SPL. And right out the gate, it's going to be a Dodgy. And Myth, I'm going to throw this over to you as our resident jungler out here. Dodgy has been seeing an immense amount of bans and ban priority, maybe even towards specific teams here. What is just so strong about this Dodgy that she is like a first ban priority at this point?
Well, Dodgy is a very consistent CC bot, right? Think of her as essentially a very safe Ares pick at times, where she can just go up in the middle of a team fight, burn 3 sets of beads, and then rinse, repeat, do it again. This time you're burning lives instead of beads, or maybe you're getting the ultimate the second time around, third time around, maybe. Able to confirm some of those kills, but no matter what, Dodgy is going to consistently take away resources from her opposition. And then if you pull a lead with Dodgy, burst potential incredibly high, 1v1 potential incredibly high in that same right. She's seen some buffs roll her way essentially just through builds. Hydra's Lament, certainly an item that she prioritizes very highly and, well, makes very great use of as well, thanks to that 10% penetration added onto it.
Well, to stack the Dodgy as far as jungle bans are, it's a Gilgamesh and a Khepri now on the side of the Solar Scarabs. Kings will take away Cthulhu, Kali, and Kabrakan. So a couple of jungle shots thrown over there towards the way of Scream. But the first bans come through, and now into first picks. We have Erlong Shen out of the jungle here for the Solar Scarabs, and the Camelot Kings will draft up Medusa Yamoja. So making sure that they can get that dual lane priority. We've talked to the ends of the earth here about this Medusa and her strengths out there. Yamoja, though, still, even with all the nerfs that have come her way, she still seems to be crawling her way towards the top of the pick priority.
Look, man, heals always going to feel very good. The ability to displace an enemy without having to put your body at risk, always going to be very good. Riptide essentially acting as a Herc pool in some of these fights, but it also doesn't have a cooldown. So if you're real nice with it, do it twice. You're displacing somebody to the same extent of a Sobek block, but all without putting yourself at risk. Passive healing thanks to the auto attacks, HP shield, as well as just burst healing thanks to that second ability. And you are able to control the relics on the other side when you have a Yamoja on your team, at least a little bit. Generally, we'll see one Phantom Shell picked up in response to this pick. Otherwise, could have been a Fortifying Shell, which will give you HP shield and movement speed. Now, you're really picking it up just to deal with one guy. It's a very strong, very versatile pick for their team. And the Camelot Kings get to double dip on aggression in the duo lane, assuming that it is Medusa headed over towards the duo. Yamoja has got very strong clear for a Guardian, also has great lockdown potential, Lacerate plus Viper Shot, always going to do 50-60% of a Hunter's HP bar. This is a very scary duo lane for the Camelot Kings.
Well, one god that had an almost 100% pick rate, but had a 100% win rate, at least in the games that she did make it through Kleena, goes all the way to a 4th ban on the side of the Solar Scarabs here. Very surprising to see that god make it so far up the list here. But alongside that Erlong Shen, it's RDO Bacchus to match some of that aggression, at least in the dual lane with this Bacchus up against Yamoja. And then a Cerberus to round out the top 3 there of the Kings. And then a direct response over towards the mid laner of the Scarabs. We were talking about Baronic and his Giannis play that he was able to bring out last week. And the Kings don't want to deal with that. They'll go ahead and ban that one away here. And maybe wise to throw some bans towards Baronic. I mean, we've been seeing the ADC meta at this point. You can kind of not really play whatever you want, but you can kind of play whatever you want there, so not wanting to throw any bans at least over towards Stewart.
No, not this time. Bastet going to round out the ban column here. The Solar Scarabs going to go ahead and remove yet another from Captain Twig's God Pool on the other side. The Camelot Kings are going to have their best decision so far. So, looking at the drafts already, the Solar Scarabs have picked up a triple frontline composition with their first 3 selections, and it is an incredibly strong one. RDO and Bacchus going to be able to establish lane dominance relatively easy. I've said that RDO essentially does not have any poor matchups in the soul lane. Nobody really directly counters this god. You can counter facets of her kit. Cerberus, if it is going to be over there in the lane with them, could potentially mitigate some of that healing, steal it for himself. You're not going to stop all that damage output. You're not going to be able to stop that clear. You're not going to be able to even channel your Ghastly Breath fully because of the stun in that bear stance. So RDO, although slightly mitigated, going to feel just fine in that lane. Otherwise, the only concern I have so far for the Solar Scarabs draft is likely this Erlong Shen. I've said it plenty of times. The win rate, not very convincing. Very feast or famine, more often famine in the last couple of months. So I've got high expectations for this pick, especially because it was a first pick selection.
Yeah, I mean, this Erlong Shen across pretty much all levels of competitive has been struggling to find some wins out here. Coming out of the bans, though, with that Giannis and the Zeus ban out of the Kings, it'll be a jungle pickup on the side of the Kings here. A Nemesis immediately after to maybe deal with some of this triple front line. Bacchus always seen as one of the tankiest Guardians in the game. Nemesis should be able to make good work here. But now you're over here towards the Solar Scarabs. I mean, some of these top, flat pen mage abusers that we've seen out here, the Thoughts, Agnis, those are still out. So it feels that, maybe just a small little target there, at least onto the side of the Kings. But Amu's and Cobb, I mean, how do you feel about this guy coming back in here? I mean, we didn't see him for a little while when Season 9 turned around, but he seems to have been rearing his head back here in the SPL.
I'm a big AMC fan. He's got great laning phase, very easy to clear out these waves, maintain some semblance of safety, just throw out the swarm of bees, the honey, immediately reset yourself back to tower. Very often we'll see these teams when lined up against AMC say, oh, well, he doesn't have a dash, he doesn't have a leap, we should jump on him early game. But they kind of forget about how much damage output he's got in his own right. That Stinger is just a massive bit of burst, and if anybody's nearby, they get to benefit from additional defense shred. I believe it's 30% from Stinger on whoever he's able to connect that onto. And looking at the rest of the draft already built around this AMC, defense shred going to help out this Ola run a fair bit. Erlong Shen going to have a much easier time confirming some of these kills. The follow-up is there. The combo, incredibly scary. Erlong Shen pin from a distance, turtle form knockup. Stinger's probably already on you, but barring that, failing that, still got the 9 turns blessing to make sure that he's always landing that ability.
And Neath, a final pick here out of the Camelot Kings. And this one we've seen kind of flex between a couple of different spots here between that Hunter and that mid-roll. But typically, when we have seen this Neath go into the mid lane, it's been very heavily abused. I mean, Mifflin, when you're looking at the triple front line that the Solar Scarabs have, I mean, where do you even want to slot this Neath? Do you want to throw it in mid to deal with this Erlong Shen, 2v2 matchup with the AMC?
Yeah, I'd probably send her towards mid. You want to be able to farm the map consistently, and I think you're going to get a good deal of farm very early on in mid. You can go for this more ability-focused build. But I like this Neath selection, namely, to deal with AMC. What did I just say is the main issue that these teams have is closing gap onto AMC, and when they do, they're generally pretty far out of position. What if you start the fight by removing 80% of AMC's HP? Just immediately.
Pretty good.
Just a little bit more damage to finish off some of these kills, and you can trust that a Petrify in a team fight will probably find its way home. You can trust that Cerberus should be able to close that gap relatively easily, and barring all that, you still have great displacement from Umoja. You're able to move yourself or your teammates a little bit closer. Nemesis double dash, only really going to need the slice and dice to finish off some of these kills as well. But I do echo your concerns of, yes, Neath is very strong into this matchup, but has struggled historically in mid to just survive that laning phase. But if the answer of the Camelot Kings is to just play the macro farm, play a slow pace throughout the early game, well, that's what they'll do. They'll just sit in the mid tower and wait until that point in the game where that Neath ultimate is a threat in its own right.
Well, as we look at these teams holistically here, as we start getting towards these late game team fights, we've talked about how the Umoja, typically one of the answers is right now is you pick up a Phantom Shell. Now you don't have to deal with their ultimate. I'm looking over here at the side of the Camelot Kings. Who's going to be the one to really close in and try and close gap on this Ola run? We talked about how you can take down the AMC, but who's going to be the one jumping in the middle of these sanctified fields to deal with them, Mifflin?
Well, I'm hoping nobody jumping into a center of a sanctified field, right? Like you don't really want to do that. When you don't have the picks like Cthulhu that can just completely ignore a sanctified fields or the Camazots, generally it's we're going to play a version. We're just going to say, okay, sanctified fields down, time to disengage. We'll wait it out. It's a long cooldown. Then you re-engage, and essentially it's just an immobile ADC mage, right, that has the ability to crit.
Well, when we're talking about these two teams out here, both these teams sitting 1-1 currently on the standings. Solar Scarabs were able to find a win last week over the Valkyries. Had an unfortunate loss up to the Dragons, and then the Camelot Kings with a loss to the Leviathans, but a win over the Bolts. So both of them trying to fight to at least improve their ways in the standings here. Mifflin, looking at these two teams, where are you putting your favoritism here in Game 1 with these drafts?
I really like both drafts a lot. I think it comes down to where it is on the map that they decide to play, who's going to establish the leads throughout the early game. If Erlong Shen gets the ball rolling early, the Solar Scarabs going to feel very good throughout the rest of the match because they've got some very, very strong scaling come mid to late. So you need that Erlong Shen to act as your bridge pick to get you to that phase. If he famines, like we have seen from Erlong Shen, well, I'm going immediately to the Camelot Kings. In a dead even state or even from a lead, I think the Kings can certainly run away with the game. So with history as an indicator, I think I just favor the Kings overall.
So as far as coming down to it, late game, the Kings want to make sure this Erlang Shen does go down. Meanwhile, for the Solar Scarabs, the Erlang Shen, should it start to falter here, where's kind of that bounce back point for them? Is it over there in the dual lane with Bobby and Stewart? Is it through Baronic? I mean, where do they find their way through if Scream should not be able to find any kind of success earlier on?
If Scream's struggling throughout the early, I think you just lean back and you say to yourselves, all right, well, we scale. We've got an AMC. We've got an Olaron. Let's similarly wait it out and get to that late game portion of the match. I would expect Scream to likely transition his build, pivot into more of a frontliner if he doesn't get the ball rolling early on, become that initiator for his team, and just act as another piece of that front line for his squad, because you do have so much damage already coming from AMC and Olaron.
Well, our first set of the day, our first game of the day, the Solar Scarabs and the Camelot Kings. Who is going to find their success? Let's throw right over into game one to find out.
Thanks so much, J-Mac and Mifflin on the desk. Me and Trelly will be bringing you this game between the Scarabs and the Camelot Kings. And obviously, Trelly, we saw the picks and bans here, a couple of contested picks, but more importantly for me is where the battle around the obelisk is going to be today, because both these teams last week had a lot of pressure around their areas, some successful, some not so much.
Yeah, I think Genetic's probably the premier support right now that is fine with dying for that obelisk. As long as you're able to confirm that Indra Scepter for your team, I think Genetics has no problem saying, I'm going to put all my HP into this thing and then probably get 3 rotated on. I'll give them a kill, but at least we get that objective. So the Kings definitely value it a lot. It's going to be, will Bobby put that same amount of stock into it? I mean, we'll have to see.
Yeah, true. It's also depends what supports they're playing too, I guess. Umoja and Bacchus, though, too, that could technically get there and potentially get away from danger if they need to, but will we see the same sort of stock involved? Scarabs, though, in this first draft of the day, did draft a very tanky front line. RTO, Bacchus, and Erlang Shen with the top 3 picks. Kind of gave the game away of like, okay, this is what you're going to have to deal with. Do you feel Kings have done a good job of answering that so far?
I would say that the Kings do have this sort of double ADC matchup as well. I think that's what the Scarabs were going for. We have triple tank and double ADC. That late game presence is what they're going for, but then the Kings answer back and say, hey, we have Neath, who's solid early as well, but still has that late game ADC shred on top of a Medusa, and then we also have Double Guardian to back it up here. And then Twig with the Nemesis can shred a good amount of the protections from this tank squad. So I think the Camelot Kings definitely did their homework here and knew what to draft to say, hey, we can deal with this tanky front line.
Well, last time round we saw the Kings. A lot of focus from Captain Twig was to the right-hand side of the map, but this time so far in the game, it's Scream over here on the right-hand side supporting Scary D and starting to put some abuse down on Variety early on. There is definitely kill potential over in that solo lane, Trelly, especially if you do, factor in the options of the amount of damage that can come out from those two.
Yeah, looking at Variety's relic choice, I think that might be why some stock is put into this lane. A teleport is the option. There's no beads available. So much lockdown. Variety can't even go to the tower.
Yeah, first blood for Scary D over on this right-hand side, thanks to the support from Scream. And obviously, Variety now back to base. Good news, I guess, if you're a King Stan. He does have that teleport, as you were just mentioning, relics. But you can already see where the focus is from Scarabs early. Delete or remove some of the threat that Cerberus is going to bring later.
Oh yeah, Variety on this pick can be super oppressive, so just making sure to shut down that Cerberus early is going to be a solid look. But as you mentioned, that teleport, he's not going to miss a full wave. Just that first blood bounty going the way of Scary D. RDO in the lane can be very annoying from a lead, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see Scream come back. Until level 12, Variety really has no way of immuning any of this stuns until his ult as well, so it's going to be difficult to live in this lane right now.
I think it's one thing from the Scarabs to focus on that lane as well, just because it's magical damage coming out of that solo lane too, and you've got Neath and Medusa in the carry roles for the Kings this game. Reducing the amount of magical damage means you can just focus on that physical defense a little bit more, not worry about the threat of Cerberus popping off too much, but also just limiting what Variety can do in these team fights, because when you look at the composition, realistically, it's probably a Cerberus that's going to be doing these engages for the squad.
Yeah, definitely looking like the go button. Probably a blink late game for Variety, just making sure to hit that Stygian Torment and set up for the squad. But now I'm looking towards Big Man Ting's build, going for the Mannequin Scepter, not opting to go for that Bluestone start, trying to get that late game Hidden Blade Neath one-shot build going. It's going to be super annoying if you are the carries on the Scarab, just getting 50, 60, 70% of your HP gone just with that World Weaver.
Well, take into account the shred from Captain Twig as well coming into play if they can get some damage off from that Nemesis. Speaking of the Nemesis a little bit more, right inside, you did see the blue buff invade on from Scream towards Variety's buff, but as an answer back, Twig did the same thing and took away the blue buff from Scary D, so at least the farm is relatively even, just not going to the right individuals, and now Variety finds himself here in the solo lane, no mana, no teleport available, and pinned under his tower with a bit of a lead against him.
Yeah, this is the issue with that teleport. When you do have it, you're feeling pretty solid in lane, but when you don't have it and you are getting out pressure because you don't have a safe relic, now you don't have the mana to clear the wave. Are you going to back and lose a full wave? It looks like Variety is going to choose to do that. So now back in base, Scaredy gets to push that full wave under tower. You're going to lose some gold and XP.
Gank in mid lane, Big Man Tings backflips away, pulled back in by Scream, but immediately beads out by Tings. Now Twig turns up to the fray, but only at level 4 here. Not a whole ton he can do. Does ding 5. Pressure relieved in mid lane, but it does cost Big Man Tings his beads.
Yeah, there's no way that Twig's going to try to aggress onto Baronic right now. With the Stinger available, you can pretty much shut down all of the aggression from Twig. So I think AMC very safe in this mid lane. Solid amount of clear. Obviously, you're just throwing your honey and your swarm at the wave, and then you can back up. You have the movement speed from the hives as well. So Twig has his work cut out for him here if he's trying to relieve some of that pressure. Obviously, Tings had to use his beads there, so it's going to be difficult to try to live right now in that mid lane.
1,000 gold lead just under for the Scarabs so far in this game, and some of that will come from the first blood, obviously, but as well, they're just doing a better job of farming the map. The good news is, though, if you're a Kings fan, still the experience is relatively even between the two, as Variety continues to battle over in the solo lane here. And now Captain Twig on the rotation for blue buff for Variety to make sure he can secure this one for himself. It will relieve some of that pressure we saw early now in this solo lane.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Scaredy's even going to post up there because he doesn't have his backup right now. Scream still doing his back camps at the moment as we see an engage over in duo.
And already Stuart's dead, and you saw the World Weaver was channeled there by Big Man Tings, but wasn't even needed. Netroid and Genetics catching Stu out of position is going to put some pressure now for the Kings towards this duo lane. And now it's the question is, do we see Scream start to position himself towards duo to answer back, or do they still look for threats elsewhere?
I would say with Stuart's ult down and the beads down, it's going to be very difficult right now for Netroid to try to just pressure him out, but it looks like Scaredy might be getting pulled under tower here. Probably just fine, though. This RDO pick, extremely tanky right now, and the amount of sustain it brings. Not going to worry about that ultimate, though. But as I was mentioning, I just don't think that right now Stuart can live in this lane.
Blinking from Scream knocks up Twig, and the follow-ups there from Baronic 2 to get the kill. Heal comes through for Scream and tops him back up. Big Man Tings can't do too much on that knee from that position. Great opportunity taken by the Scarabs there.
Yep, and we're seeing again, Genetics is sitting around in that duo lane, not wanting to let Netroid solo farm just yet. Inbound, gonna get the backflip down pretty early on, and there might be a chase, but it doesn't look Baronic can make it. So not having the Stinger available, looks like Big Man Tings lives another day.
Good stuff for the Scarabs, though, looking at how this game began. Solo lane kill, and then transitioning towards a pick in the jungle area. And here's Genetics now.
Finally.
We talked a little bit about the Obelisk plays, and this is one of them. We may see some more battles. These two supports have been the two in the league in week 1 that stood out looking to invade consistently. So it's a similar game plan. At the moment, though, rotations now coming in from junglers and mid laners here. As you can see, Baronic and Twig battling over those camps. And Inbound just making sure he doesn't lose too many more of those Obelisk charges. Both teams positioned to pick up the first one of the game.
Yeah, I think anytime you see Baronic rotating at the moment, he's got a level 2 Stinger, just ticked over to level 9, so hardest hitting ability on the map by far. I don't think you want to really fight around this AMC, so right when they caught wind that, hey, maybe the AMC is leaving lane, they're going to have to back off there. They did, however, confirm the Obelisk. Just stealing away that one offering and then getting the back camps was enough. So now the Camelot Kings continue to keep the pressure of this Obelisk, and I think Genetics might go over and grab that Interceptor soon, trying to just add a little bit of pressure to his damage that he already has.
About a 700 gold lead in the solo lane right now in favor of Scaredy, and you can see that from the itemization too. Obviously, both of them still abiding, something that's coming into the meta a little bit more as of late, Trelly. Is that mainly because of the buffs that it's had? I always felt like it was kind of tricky to fit into builds.
Yeah, it's difficult because late game it doesn't really do too much. You want to sell it, but it's such an early game power spike, especially for these tanky Guardians that have the CC. Obviously, flat pen is always going to be a nice stat that you want, so just sort of a bruiser first item that you can do to keep bullying out in lane. And then on top of that, a Wing Blade, so Scaredy has a fair bit of magical prot, but the speed, anytime that Ghastly Breath comes out, RDO is going to be either really fast or just really quick to disengage.
Scream heading into the jungle on the right-hand side here. Just seen what's up and available. May look towards Big Man Tings in the mid lane again. But at the moment, there's not a whole lot of pressure to speak of because Baronic and obviously Bobby heading towards that left-hand side. A lot of ward coverage across the map at the moment, specifically left-hand side is now Inbound turns up. And here's the key from what Genetics and Netroid are trying to do, trying to freeze Stuart off the wave a little bit and put him out of position like they did for that first kill.
Yeah, definitely recognizing that Oleron is going to come online very hard late game, but right now, not the best lane clear, not the best sustain, but it looks like Scream is recognizing this as well and trying to come out and help the duo lane here. But I don't think they're going to get too aggressive. Still hugging that tower line. The Camelot Kings are not trying to clear this wave too hard because they want Stewart to push up. They don't want him under tower.
Forces him to share experience too, because you have Bobby having to come over there to support him as well. Now we're grouping in mid lane from Kings though. Twig just going to continue to farm up. Checking in with builds. Transcendence now fully online for Baronic. Bit of cooldown reduction now in that kid as well that will come into play. And meanwhile, the junglers, we've got a bit of a difference there. Brawlers beat Stick versus the Jotuns. A couple more cooldown. Now Stewart is in trouble, but Genetics could be the one getting ganked here because Scream and Inbound are on the way. All in on towards Netroid from Scream here as the ultimates drop down. Not enough to cover Netroid yet, who's buying as much time as he can. Still being whittled down in health, and the rest of his team nowhere to be seen in support. Too late to the party and zoned away. Scarabs find another kill in the duo lane.
Yeah, this Neath pick, you're able to help your team from a distance with the World Weaver, but not having your body actually there in the fight, it's going to prove a little bit difficult. Tings just goes for the red buff instead of making that rotation, and even Captain Twig was a little bit late to the party, as you mentioned. So while there is a little bit of lead in support, now Stewart gets an answer kill back and finally gets to sit a little bit safer in this lane. The Solar Scarabs have climbed to almost a 2k gold lead now.
Now the invade comes out from the Scarabs here, looking at the purple buff. Genetics low, and Omni right now has a stun, gets the beads out of Stewart. But look at this, big man Tings on the rotation, look for the pickup. Will get the back flick off and manage to find the unravel. It's not enough for a kill, but that will be as the Spirit Arrow connects and brings him down. Great turnaround play from the Kings, but on the right-hand side, we got more action. Twig's gonna fall down.
It looks like Baronic will have the chase here. They're able to dive this. I don't think Variety has any safety and will be able to pick up the Stinger once again. So Baronic, huge rotation over to the solo lane, just answering back, realizing, hey, that my mid lane right now is making the duo lane's life miserable, so I'm gonna go help over here.
And that's one of the things about a mid laner at times, right? It's like, where do you go when the opposition has disappeared? Do I try and follow and find a turnaround kill? Or do I look for pressure elsewhere? And Scarabs are doing a good job of, when Kings do something, they're finding out answers elsewhere on the map. And that's pushing this gold lead up over 2,000 now, thanks to Doug showing us on screen. And Scarabs are in a pretty good position at the moment.
Yeah, and they do have this double ADC comp with the Erlong Shred. At any moment, this Gold Fury could be an afterthought. So making sure that vision, as we mentioned earlier, is going to be very key for the Camelot Kings. They have to keep this Gold Fury constantly warded because it could be shredded like that. So I think making sure to have that ward coverage on this left side of the map is going to be very key here for the Camelot Kings.
Starting to see the level discrepancies come through. Variety justing level 11 as Scaredy justings level 12 there. That second relic will be available. And saving the mid lane as Baronic has a bit of a lead there over Big Man Tings. Some of that will be based off experience sharing. But as you can see, checking in with Oleron real quick, Stewart's had a bit of a rough time in that lane so far, but he's still keeping pace for the most part with Netroid.
Yeah, it looks like the Gilded Arrow, the extra gold, is also going to help out. As we see, the Camelot Kings are just burning down the Pyromancer. Once you hear that tick sound, I can't believe that the Scarabs aren't immediately pulling the gold for you. You have to recognize everyone's on the right side of the map.
Yeah, well, it looks like there's going to be some pressure towards the solo lane here. Scary D going to get ulted from that World Weaver from Big Man Tings. Twig out of position to do anything. Instead, Scarabs can't look at that Fury they're after. Instead, it's invades on the red buff that are successful here.
And it looks like, again, Netroid is still under that tower, so not going to be able to make a rotation here. Still, they have a good amount of burst onto this objective, but they really don't want to 50-50 it. Even with that River's Rebuke available, just going to be too much disruption. But finally, they are sort of posturing towards this left side of the map. There's no buffs up except the purple, so I think this could be a Gold Fury pull.
Well, taking into account, they did use a couple of ultimates with the Kings in that solo lane just now, so Variety's not his, and Big Man Tings doesn't have his for this Gold Fury contest. Scarabs could be in prime position. Scream going to blink in early, all in on Genetics, and Genetics is losing his health very, very quickly. Now he falls down, but so does Bobby at the tail end, or does he? He's got one hit from death. So has Netroid at the same time. Only Genetics falls down here, but I think the damage of the fight is just going to relieve pressure around the Fury for now, as neither side feels confident about going for it.
Yeah, just a little bit too late on that Gold Fury call. Once all the Camelot Kings did rotate over, it seemed like it was just an afterthought at that point. Still, Captain Twig able to stay pretty even in the farm game right now. I expected to look over, because you see Baronic, he's level 15, but Scream only level 11, focusing more on these ganks more than just running to farm camps. I think Baronic's been taking the brunt of these back camps at the moment. So both of these junglers a little bit under-leveled right now as far as the game goes, but matching each other pretty well as Scream finally ticks over to 12.
I definitely mentioned as well, the AMC versus Neath battle in mid. Sure, in the early game, I feel like Neath has a pretty good time of things. But scalability as the game goes on, I'd definitely rather have an AMC in the later stages than a Neath option.
Yeah, the late game shred is going to be a lot better for this AMC, as well as just being able to put the stinger on, shred some protections, and get a large ability cripple down on these targets. So I think Variety, Captain Twig, even BMT are going to really not want to get hit by that stinger late game. So I think you're right. The AMC just brings a little bit more pressure. The World Weaver, if you're using it correctly and just trying to get these side lanes a little bit of help, is going to work out. But late game in a team fight setting, I think AMC brings more to the table.
Well, that last little skirmish around the Gold Fury, you did see Scream engage on Genetics, and he did go for that Toxic Blade that was up and available for him in that. I like the idea of this build, very auto-attack focused from Scream for the most part, but making sure it's a lot of anti-heal in this as well, just to limit what Genetics can do and try to reduce the sustain that the Camelot Kings have, because there's a few gods on that side there that have some hidden sustain as well, you know, the likes of the Cerberus and Neath as well. So limiting some of that anti-heal down is opening this window for another Gold Fury.
And it looks like Stewart is going to be pulling here. They have a lot of damage, but they're not going to 50-50. They're going for the engage here, and Twig's caught out. Yeah,
Twig's getting focused a little bit. Has to double dash back to safety. Genetics and Netroid on scene, though. Gold Fury taking a long time to go down. Giving a chance for the Kings to try and get in position and defend. Genetics no ultimate just yet. It's going to be on Netroid with that Medusa ult to make a big play, and he gets the damage out, but it's not enough for a kill. He's got to skirt for his life and won't survive either. Scary D and Genetics fall. Gold Fury still being whittled down as Variety now into the pit looking for a steal away, and the Kings will steal away the Gold Fury as they get zoned away from the initial engagement. After the fact, Variety falls down. It's 3 deaths on the side of the Kings, but they do steal away a Gold Fury.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, that Gold Fury steal is huge, but if the Scarabs are able to get some towers off this, but look at this, Captain Twig gets mid tower, and he's going to take all the farm on the right side of the map here. The Scarabs really need to try to get active, realizing that there's only 2 people on the map at the moment that can really engage. Obviously, Genetics is just coming back from base, but look at them. They're stealing away so much farm here.
And look at the Teamfight Recap at the bottom there. Gold and experience. Gold at least going in favor of the Kings there, based off them getting that tier 1 tower. So Gold Fury, tier 1 tower for 3 lives. It's not the worst trade in the world at all.
No, it definitely could have been worse if the Scarabs were able to confirm that, but props to Variety just hitting a huge spit at the end there to make sure to confirm that. Even an ult after the fact to just say, hey, I'm going to get some relics down. If you're looking at the Solar Scarabs relics, you're seeing most of them are down at the moment, so a team fight could benefit the Kings at the moment, but still, crazy amount of outplay for Variety there.
And here's a little replay of Variety going in at the tail end of that fight. That's one of the reasons Netroid and Genetics were so far forward in that engagement, giving vision to their teammates, making them aware of when the opportunity to maybe steal was. And if I'm honest, when they fell, that was the only real thing Variety could do. But hold this, as Scream, under a bit of pressure in the jungle, will resustain, as the focus now from Netroid will connect with that ultimate, but it won't be enough to bring down the tanky body that is Bacchus there, and Erlang Shen slips away back to safety. 9-2 though, Scarabs in a control of this game still, even after the last couple of skirmishes.
Yeah, inbound taking 2 ults there, and you really couldn't tell by that health bar. That's just the benefit of the Bacchus Chug. You just get so many extra protections and mitigations for this pick. So despite being a level 11, even taking 2 damaging abilities from these late game hunters is not going to shake him too much at the moment. But still, the Pyromancer is up, and it looks like the Solar Scarabs have recognized that. Going to put at least some face checking here to make sure it's not being snuck away. But now that they're grouping here, we might see a pull.
I think we expected a little bit of craziness from the Scarabs, especially after Valkyrie's performance last week. A couple of concerns from fans. The Scarabs will take away that Pyromancer before Kings can get the damage over the wall. But Scarabs game 1 last week against Valks fell down game 1, and you're like, well, is this going to be a rough season for the Scarabs? Looking at how they're doing against the Kings here. They've come to play today. Only Stewart has fallen in this set. Everybody else, big old duck egg, no deaths so far. It's looking good, in my opinion, of how the Scarabs are planning to transition towards this late-stage game.
Yeah, their team fight presence has been very solid. It's just that objective fight that they have to work on here. Obviously, 50-50ing with the Petrify available was a questionable play. They do get the picks after the fact, but just had to work on confirming that Gold Fury. Obviously, Variety doing a great job, again, of stealing it away. But looking at Big Man Tings' build, very different from what Baronix opted to build here. Again, he is going into that Fail Not for some cooldown and crit chance. Going to give crit chance to the whole team when that ultimate is fired, obviously. So definitely a different style of build here that we're seeing from BMT, whereas Baronic has just gotten a Titan's Bane and saying, I'm going right into Heartseeker. I'm trying to do as much ability damage as I really can out of this AMC.
Interesting about that Fail Not, though, because it will allow, like you said, you know, the crit for the team, so Nemesis gets a little bit of crit there, but so does Medusa, who's not been building into it so far. More focus on the pen options, almost matching what we're seeing out of Baronic in mid lane on AMC. I do feel, though, that as we look at magical damages as this game goes on, Kings are limited a little bit by their options here. They will be relying on variety. They will be relying on genetics to really put some damage out where possible.
Yeah, we're only seeing the only hybrid item at the moment is that Stone of Biding from Variety. Obviously, maybe a Pridwin Explosion from Genetics as well, but still, not too much in that magical damage, as you mentioned. That's why we're seeing Scary D optimized this way with a Witchblade and a Nemean Lion. Lots of physical defense at the moment. We're also seeing Bobby with that Wingblade as well, so really valuing the amount of slows that the Nemesis and the Cerberus can provide.
I was going to mention, do we see a Heavenly Agility this game to counter some of what Nemesis will bring? But the answer seems to be, we'll lean on the Wingblade potentially if we need to, and the Relics alone. I think Heavenly Agility would have been an option, though.
I'm looking at double Horrific Emblem out of the Solar Scarabs, and I was wondering, will Genetics say, hey, maybe we need a sprint to try to counter that? But no, just going for the shell, not really caring about that double Horrific Emblem. So lots of slows coming from the Scarabs in their own right.
And those double Horrifics reduce an attack speed more than anything else. And guess what Camelot Kings need? Is attack speed, because you've got Nemesis, who does rely on some basic attacks, but so do both those Hunters. You're reducing their actual damage output over a period of time in long, sustained team fights. Going to cause problems for the Kings, and they have to find answers back.
Yeah, it looks like right now I'm seeing a lot of anti-Captain Twig. That seems to be the case here. Obviously, you do have double Hunters here, but you're looking at this Assassin that has a big slow, and then you want to chase. Obviously, Wingblade on the tanks, that's going to be very difficult to deal with. Twig, 0-2, level 16, tied for the lowest level besides these supports here, so not looking too solid. Hasn't been able to get too active on the map just yet, but still, Nemesis comes online pretty hard late game, so it looks like if this game does go another 5-6 minutes, he'll have a full build anyways.
Well, I was expecting to be quiet for a moment or two until this Fury spawned, but straight away, action in, and the damage out from Baronic to try and put some towards it is going to cost him a lot of health. Still survives, and the Scarabs do steal that away from the Kings, who started early. Baronic still surrounded by Variety, Twig very low on the backside as well. Ultimate comes through from Stu there to just dissuade the Kings from continuing, as Variety slips the noose on the left-hand side. Genetics will be a casualty of war here at the tail end. Scream going to continue on looking for Variety as Big Man Tings and Netroid zoned away by Bobby, and it's 2 kills against, well, it's not 2 kills. Jeez, I spoke too soon.
There's
1
no
kill.
way.
But the Scarabs do get the Gold Fury.
Yeah, Baronic's Bees, 22 damage was enough to steal that one away. I really think because Inbound was able to disrupt that backline with the Intoxicate, make everyone drunk, you really weren't able to confirm that Gold Fury, and just 22 damage from the Beast. That's all it really took to make sure that Fury goes down. And now you're looking at to this point where the builds are starting to get a little bit more in favor of the Scarabs, obviously. A little bit out of hand here, these power spikes. Only a 3.5 thousand gold lead for the Solar Scarabs, but still the team fight presence, as we've mentioned, that could have been very easily 2 dead. Variety gets out by the skin of his teeth, but besides that, I think the Scarabs are looking so solid. They should feel confident to pull this Fire Giant, and now they're posturing to do so.
Well, we've got ultimates down on both sides there. Could be a tricky one if they go for that. Ward coverage will be the first thing to answer, and there we go. Sentry Ward down from Scream. Genetics and Twig on scene as they see the Fire Giant pulled for the first time this game. Ultimate coming up for Variety soon. See if that makes an impact here. Taking a bit of time to whittle down this FG as a stun hits from Variety onto Inbound. Ultimate follow up on Scream forces him back as Twig has to double dash away. Inbound takes a ton of damage off that engagement, but nobody dead just yet. The sustain from Genetics could now come into play a little bit.
And now Netroid still has not shown face on this fight. Obviously was pushing left at the time, but the Scarabs are all backing off here, and it looks like the Kings are trying to sort of chase them out, just see where they can look for a pick if possible. But all 5 of the Camelot Kings have grouped up over here as well, so we might be looking for a repull or at least a re-engage as Scream farms up his speed buff, just trying to get some levels here.
Definitely a power spike for Kings in terms of relics available. I want to say Aegis and Beads and Aegis available for Netroid. Not the same from the Solar Scarabs there as Kings get that Pyromancer after the little skirmish once again. I'm not happy if I'm either team trying to pull the objective, if I'm honest, because every time we've kind of seen the big objectives taken over, it's the other team that's stolen it away by coming in late to the party.
Yeah, it seems like whoever's pulling right now is doing a better job here as they try to recognize that Captain Twig may be out of position, but double dashing away shouldn't be a problem. Netroid still is sticking around, has not gone back to that duo lane to try to collect some farm. Again, the Scarabs, they haven't left. All 5 still here at the moment as Variety sort of lags behind, but I don't think they're going to go for the pull. They didn't like how that first one went. They're more so looking for a pick here.
Scream blinks in, looks at Genetics. Genetics being focused down, tries to get through the Riptide, does so, but still falls down to the damage from Baronic and the rest of the Scarabs. Now a 4v5 for the Kings to deal with. Scream going to fall back to base if he can, get regen back up, and Scarabs may just wait for him to return before engaging this FG.
Yeah, again, I don't think they were happy with how that pull, that bait really went. Again, that pick is what they're looking for. They're looking to try to say, hey, we're doing this objective, we swear. And then once you walk up, blink in. Obviously, Scream had to use the blink there to make sure that Genetics falls down. 4v5, still not too confident here on pulling. I think they're, again, going to try to look for a cripple of sorts to try to catch someone out.
So who's the next one? Well, it's no one at the moment. Inbound's going to be on zone duty. Scaredy and Scream tank up the FG. Variety coming into the pit. Inbound jumps in, on towards Twig to try and buy some time. Trying to zone away the carries of the Kings. And the Scarabs get the Fire Giant. The Medusa ultimate did go through, but it wasn't timed well enough. Scary D now on a killing spree at 3-0 and 5 as Netroid falls down trying to support his team there. Beads consumed, and Scarabs have 4 members with the Fire Giant.
The Riptide is a good chase tool here. It looks like the Scarabs haven't caught on to this. The Camelot Kings are trying to get these Fire Giant buffs off.
Oh, he got him in the walls, and now he's trapped in. The Aegis won't keep him alive. On the backside, though, Stuart and Scary boxing. And now Stuart under pressure as all the damage dealers focusing on towards him. Scream trying to do what he can with the basic attack. Scary will pick up Twig at the tail end, but it cost Scream his life too. That was a Fire Giant team from the Scarabs, and the Kings have made them pay on the return towards their base. Can they find more, though? Tier 2 tower, maybe. Great fight from the Kings.
Yeah, they got 4 Fire Giants off. Scary D, the only one to stand here, and he's trying to defend this tower. It looks like just because BMT takes so much damage, I don't think this Tier 2 tower will fall. In fact, he might even try to chase here just because he can, but no one really available for the chase. Inbound is trying to get to that backline, but I don't think they're going to be able to kill Variety here. He's just so tanky.
Yeah, they're not going to find a kill here, but they are going to slow down what the Kings can really do with this man advantage or two. Pulled under the Tier 1 tower is Scary D, but as we said, tanky enough to sustain that, especially with the amount of physical defense he's got on the board right now. Crazy engagement from the Kings, though, just catching Scarabs in an awkward spot, if I'm honest.
Yeah, the Camelot Kings didn't do a great job of stealing that Fire Giant, but they did a better job of just saying, hey, we're going to take the Fire Giant away from you at this point. You didn't realize we had the Riptide, the Genetics comes back, the chase ensues, and now they're trying to pull this Gold Fury, but the Camelot Kings are well aware of this.
They're going to have to give this one up, I feel. Scarabs are not going to have the damage output to bring down this Gold Fury before the Kings show up on scene. So they will be a reset for now until the Kings turn up here. And only Scary D with the FG buff this time round. As you can see by the gold, though, funny enough, with those last little skirmishes in that Fire Giant fight, the Kings have caught up. They're just about 1,000 gold behind, so the deficit is falling now, and we're almost back to an even game.
Yeah, I still think the late game is going to favor the Scarabs if they can get Stewart online. Enough damage from that Oleron is going to shred just about anyone. He does have that Diamond Arrow upgrade, so a lot of extra added damage into his auto attacks as BMT starts to charge up this Wall Reaver.
Who are you looking for, Trelly? If you're doing that well, it's going to be Scream this time round. Didn't get a chance to say. Great Riptide back in from Genetics. Scream uses his ult to try and get himself some sustain and healing, but Captain Twig will make sure that does not happen at all. Bobby now in a bit of an awkward spot as Genetics tries to stop him getting towards Netroid, but all the while Scary D's going in to find it. Twig meanwhile on the backside gets taken down by the damage from the bees, and now the bees surround Variety too. Stuart pops him in the back of the head and brings down Variety, and Scarabs are on the chase for the remaining members. Great 3-man done into a knockup. Baronic finds a double kill, and now Genetics will fall down too, and this should at least be a Phoenix.
These double Guardians are doing a masterclass of how to disrupt the backline. Scary D has not stopped W-keying this whole time, giving the double ADCs chance to just hard carry these fights. Obviously, Twig did a great job as BMT finally falls down of trying to find that pick onto Scream. Besides that, these Guardians were too tanky. They set up everything, and now the siege begins.
Not sure if they can end. I'm not 100% just because of the amount of towers still up for the Kings on the right-hand side of the map here. Does
Double
make the
ADC.
Titan a little bit tankier, but as you said, double ADC and 18 seconds to play with. This could be the end of game one as Scarabs find wiggle room at the Gold Fury, taking a great fight that pays off, and it's mainly, as you were saying, down to that front line of the Scarabs being so good.
Yeah, Scary D had 3 members just by himself. Obviously, inbound goes to the back, tries to help peel Variety off, and at that point, when you just have 2 ADCs that are this late into the game, they're just able to shred through pretty much everything. As long as you have that setup and that peel, you're going to be able to hard carry those fights.
I didn't really feel worried for the Scarabs there. Honestly, throughout that entire game, there was nothing that really caused me concern. If you were a Scarabs fan going, oh, we've got to be careful of this, maybe the Gold Fury steal?
Yeah, besides the Gold Fury steal and maybe getting a little bit overconfident after the Fire Giant, not really there being chased, besides that, their team fight looked very solid.
I will say Scream kind of led the charge throughout that game there, it felt like to me. We'll see what the desk has to say after this break.
couldn't stand tall. So why didn't you call? So many years has gone by, but I think about you all the time. Looks like you're changing and all, but why didn't you call? Something in the air, always something in the air. Inexplicable, I can feel it in the air. Can you feel at all? Do you think about the things we used to do? No, you couldn't stand tall. So why didn't you call? So many years has gone by, but I think about you all the time. Looks like you're changing and all, but why didn't you call? Something in the air, always something in the air. Inexplicable, I can feel it in the air. Can you feel me?
Solar Scarabs, who take game number 1 here over the Camelot Kings. And going into kind of your talking points at the beginning of the desk here, Mifflin, it did come a lot out of this Erlong Shen in the jungle. You talk about need to be a feast or famine god. Well, in this game, Scream feasted on pretty much the entirety of the Camelot Kings, the rest of the team by his side. Shemek Mifflin here on the desk for game number 2. But game number 1, man, I mean, impressive play nonetheless here by the Scarabs, really rallying together as a full team, team fighting, and being able to out-macro one of the kings of the macro in the SPL in the Kings.
I'm not sure if it comes down to macro so much as it was that they were just murdering anybody that lined up against them, because it was a lot of kill pressure for the Solar Scarabs throughout the early portions of the game, and it's something we brought up during the first death segment, during those P's and B's. I thought had the Solar Scarabs been able to establish a lead for themselves, it'd be pretty easy for them around this Erlong Shen to maintain that lead, and that's exactly what they do. Scream is allowed to go for a little bit more damage in the build and still act as that front line to facilitate Baronic in the back line to make sure Stewart didn't have to contend with too much of that dive. The Camelot Kings didn't make it easy. Regardless of what the slash lines on the top of your screen might say, that game remains pretty close for the large portion of it, and a couple of stumbles towards those mid to late game team fights around objectives did keep the intrigue high, but at the end of the day, the Solar Scarabs picked an Erlong Shen, and he worked out well in the early game. And speaking of that Erlong Shen, we talked about Scream's kill participation throughout the early portions of last year. You were right. 78.86% of kills were affected by Scream in his first phase with the Solar Scarabs. And, well, he does the exact same thing here.
Yeah, able to reprise that here at the end. 3, 2, and 10 for his team here. 13 kills out of the 13. So 100%. Oh, no, that's not right. That's not right. It's 18.
It's all right.
I missed the 5 there, but it's okay.
Hey, we caught it.
That's why I don't try and do math whenever we're on these. I just need to let the numbers speak for themselves that are directly in front of me. And the number here is at least a 1 in front for the Solar Scarabs. They lead up this set in this best of 3 against the Camelot Kings. Stewart over here on this Ola run, we kind of saw the magical ADCs fall out a bit, but a couple of these players here, really Stewart and Netroid in particular, are 2 of these players who really still do like going to these magical hunters. And we talked a little bit about in the pregame, who's going to get to this Ola run, who's going to be able to want to stop this Ola run. Well, it seemed in the early game it was a pretty easy answer. He doesn't necessarily have his ult up, but once these late game team fights out, Stewart was dropping that ultimate even just preemptively, and his team was capitalizing big off it.
Yeah, often I even saw Stewart and I thought to myself, what is he Sanctify fielding here? And he would just drop it into the offset of a team fight as a deterrent tool at times, just saying, hey, you could dive me, but here's the thing about how time's dilated in like a 100-meter radius around me. It is, so maybe don't dive me. And the Camelot Kings did not line up against that one. That said, I think the Camelot Kings gain a good deal of knowledge from Game 1, particularly around how the Solar Scarabs are going to try to establish their lead. The Scarabs were allowed a very, very strong front line to build their draft around. That's how they started off the draft in Game 1. I'd be surprised if the Camelot Kings let them do it again.
We'll see if the Kings let them go with similar picks here, as the picks and bans for game number 2 are ready to go between these 2 teams out here. I think the Erlong Shen is a first pick. That's always the one that we question. When a team is willing to put all of their eggs in their first pick basket here of this Erlong Shen, we question, is it worth it? Well, it was. It was definitely worth it here for Stream, at least in game number 1. Do you imagine that the Kings allow them to do it again here, though, in game number 2?
I'm not sure that the Erlong Shen on its own is the reason that draft for the Solar Scarabs work. If the Kings decide to ban it, it is taking away one successful piece of that front line, but you might be forcing Scream towards something that he's a little bit more apt to go towards, the Bastets of the world, the hyper carries. Are you really going to sacrifice one of your first phase bans to remove Erlong? If that's the case, are you letting Kali through? So curious to see how the Kings address it so far. And they have targeted some of that front line. Artio taken off the table, and that back line now going to take a significant hit. I would argue that AMC has been one of the highest performing picks for Baronic in recent months. And the Kings, they take notice.
Yeah, they'll take away the Artio, the AMC, and the Erlong Shen, so they are going to make sure to put Scream on something different. And most of the Scarabs will have to play something different here in the second game. Similar bans, at least out of the Scarabs from game 1 here in game 2. Nothing has changed. Now the big difference is what's been locked in first. Kleena, with a 100% win rate here in the SPL in the 9 games that she has been allowed to make it through. And we'll see if that can be win number 10 here to keep that one consistent, as it is a first pick by the Solar Scarabs. But to match up there, the Kings immediately go for a solo lane pick of their own. Bologna now picked up.
I'm not 100% confident that it is going to be Kleena in the soul lane.
That's
does
fair.
Bring a fair deal of flex potential, as does the ESET lock-in. Could go mid, could go support. So the Solar Scarabs really only showing that they've got this picks in their draft. You could even have potentially Ull in mid if Baronic wants to play that Hunter mid style. We do know that Stewart is very capable of playing Ull, though, and one of the gods that he really generally likes to go towards himself. So I'm still not confident allocating any of these picks to any certain role right now for the Solar Scarabs. Whereas, on the other hand, I think the Kings a little bit more direct in their approach. Bologna very much likely headed for the soul lane, does have some flex potential into the jungle, but it is like 80% of the time going to be in that short lane. Medusa, generally just one of the best aggressive hunter selections, will likely find its home in the duo lane. But what are they going to match it up with in this third pick slot? Considering the flex potential already from the Solar Scarabs, if the Kings want to, they can pick a Guardian for themselves, and they do so with the Emoji lock-in. And now they can dedicate a lot more bans towards Guardians and either force this ESET into the support role, or they can force some bans on a mid, and maybe have this ESET forced into mid. This is now where bans, the Kings can control the draft a little bit more so.
They're going to start by banning one of those Guardians you were talking about, Bacchus, taken out here. So almost the entirety of the Scarabs are going to have to play something different out, as 4 out of the 5 gods from game number 1 have been removed from the table here by the Camelot Kings. They could just make it an easy, nice and easy 5 for 5, take the Yola off if they want to remove that, but no, it'll be a Xing Chen as the second ban out of the Kings. Meanwhile, other side, Solar Scarabs, they're going to take away Bastet, who is still left open up until this point, potent jungler, and solo laner if you want to maybe throw the Bologna into the jungle here, but in this case, it will be the Bastet banned away. One more ban over for the Scarabs. They could just hold it true here, just keep slamming out that jungle, make sure to put the Kings behind and make sure to at least keep Captain Twig on the back foot. But no, it will actually be a Zeus as the next ban here by the Scarabs.
Yeah, I think that's a very smart ban. I was thinking that BMT would likely go towards the Zeus, especially considering the synergy it has with the walls spawned up by Yemoja. No Phantom Shell in the first game for the Solar Scarabs. They were pretty dominant throughout the majority of it, so not too worried about initiation from the Camelot Kings. Zeus will make you worried about initiation, and, well, they remove it from the table. Surprised about that Xing Shen ban, though. I had considered that maybe they would just try and force this E-set into the support role. I think now in limiting Bobby's God Pool have done a pretty good job of doing that. But do you really think Boronic is going to take this pick towards mid? Very easy to exploit, very easy to lock down with this Yemoja. Very dangerous in her own right. The Solar Scarab's not a team that I really associate with a whole lot of early objective play, which is exactly what E-set looks to do herself. But I don't want to talk about anything else. I want to talk about the Artemis lock-in, because this is a pick that we don't see too often, and it's got some pretty strong matchups here. Specifically, you're able to immune out that slow from E-set if you drop the Vengeful Assault early. Can't, do it to cleanse yourself, but if you've already got that slow immunity, all of a sudden you don't have to worry about the Dispel Magic from E-set. Klina Ultimate, not going to be very good at locking down this Artemis. Has great turnaround potential into the Ull, into the Klina. It's very telegraphed when both of those two picks want to aggress. Generally, Klina screaming at you, or Ull lining up an axe. Either way, Caledonian Boar, a great answer.
Okay, Camelot Kings have only one pick left, Solar Scarabs. Well, maybe give us a little bit of light shine here onto where these picks are going to be going out. E-set and Klina and Ull are all three still not a for sure stamp on the page here as to where these three gods are going to be rounding themselves out.
We'll get a look.
Hopefully so.
Yeah,
I mean,
second.
Hopefully with these last two picks, we'll exactly get to see where these ones are going. Or maybe they'll still keep us guessing at the end of the day here. The Camelot Kings, pretty easy to tell where a lot of these ones are going. Now with the Artemis locked in, Medusa most likely slated over towards that mid lane. As I don't think, at least in my time watching Smite, I've seen very many Artemises go towards mid, or at least not very successful ones.
No, not a big Season 1 Boosh fan, I see.
Did Boosh play Artemis in Season 1 in the mid lane with?
I don't know.
I mostly think of Boosh as the Kukulkan and Ra, and even throw a Poseidon out there. Artemis is definitely not one that comes to mind whenever I think of Boosh.
Yeah, he might not have played it.
You're really trying to throw me for a loop over here, Mifflin. Oh, man. It's going to be a great start to the day with this one already out here. But Xingqian kind of, going back to that ban here out of the Camelot Kings, typically when I see a Xingqian, I think this is a team that's going to be going with a lot more auto-attack focus, because that first ability to Xingqian, great for really stopping a lot of that attack power that comes out of the Kings. So we'll see what that last pickup is going to be. And maybe looking towards a Habois. But the ones that we have locked in now, Nox and Olorun on the side of the Solar Scarabs. So maybe that does give us some light towards at least where this picks are going to be going. Nox has more often been going over to that support role. Olorun over there in the duo. So we got the double mage duo here out of the Scarabs.
Yeah, going to be very easy to itemize to limit some of that damage output. Magic defense, very, very potent, especially in the early portions of the game. Both these picks generally going to be lacking at damage in the early as well. So could see a very first item Heart Ward potentially for the support of the Camelot Kings, and then try to aggress onto that duo lane. E-set going to be very exposed in mid as well. It's one of the concerns I had. Yemoja, when she starts to rotate out, those Rivers Rebuke's going to be very, very strong at shutting down E-set. Similarly, going to be very difficult to lock down an Artemis. Shadow Lock, it's unmitigatable for Artemis. She's going to have to either dedicate her beads or her ultimate, but finding those abilities, difficult because of all that movement speed afforded to her. And speaking of movement speed afforded to the Camelot Kings, Habois rounding out that draft. Atlas of the Yellow River going to be very strong as a disengage tool, specifically around this Klina. She doesn't have the best ways to deal with that. Even the E-set won't be able to fully channel those Wing Gusts, and having E-set in mid means that Wing Gust is some of the bulk of your DPS in some of these late game team fights. I'm curious about this Solar Scarabs draft. This is a very, very high execution composition.
I mean, if you just look across their board to kind of echo that here, I mean, you're looking at basically no true frontliners, no Guardians, no Warriors to really get that extra natural mitigation out here. It's all mages, assassins, and hunters, all just DPS class out here. But this Nox, we've been seeing it kind of pop itself up here quite often. You're talking a lot about the matchup directly into the Artemis. How do you feel about the matchups that she has going up against some of these other gods like Bellona or even Habois?
Bellona, never going to be allowed to bludgeon. I mean, that's just simply the case. She just won't be able to. You just have to tag her one time with that silence, and you've canceled out that ability. Medusa is very telegraphed. When she decides to fully engage a fight, almost always lacerate forward, almost always going to be met with a Shadow Lock as well. So, some decent matchups for the Nox, some great ways to mitigate damage output. I'm expecting Nox, through support very often, to just hunt down this Habois, though. You want to connect that ultimate and make sure that his damage output has been mitigated, because what does Habois do in a late game team fight? He blinks forward, he water spouts, he crushing waves. If he's not killing you off that, he's probably just dying.
Who's solo and jungle in this one? Because
for which team?
For the Scarabs, we have double ADC, and we've got double mage and a Klina. Is this actually going to be an E-set jungle coming out of this team instead? And then we throw the Ullr over into the mid with the Olorun.
I think you nailed it there. I think you've
so.
got it. Yeah, that's what I do.
Maybe so. I mean, we see the E-set jungle come out of the SCC more often than not. That's usually off the back of Sino. It's usually also a case of we never, ever get to see that kind of pick. We'll see if maybe that can work out here for the Solar Scarabs in Game 2, trying to close this one out as a 2-0. Can they do it against the Camelot Kings?
Yeah, we're going to be straight into this one nice and quick. And Trelly, that composition from Scarabs is intriguing, is the word I will use on that, just to see how this plays out. It is going to be Scary in the solo lane on this cleaner. Last time we saw that, Trelly, he had a couple of issues of thinking he could go in the outer walls.
Yeah, he thought he could go into the outer walls. A few times he tried to... When he had his 1 HP, he was also trying to go into the walls. So I think Scary D hopefully got a little bit of practice on this cleaner ever since that launch tournament, obviously. But now, yeah, an interesting squad here. I do like the Nox. Inbound has shown me finally that I can trust this pick from him. The first time I saw it, I was like, very questionable. But this time, I think he's got a solid grasp on how to play this pick. On the other side, though, the E-set jungle. I mean, it's got a very high ban rate just against Sino, specifically in the SEC. Besides that, haven't seen the application too much, especially for the Scarabs roster, but we'll have to see. This pick has been highly contested in a lot of roles.
It has.
Some success, but a lot of question marks as well.
I will say this, I believe, is one of the first times I've ever seen a triple silence composition. With Cleaner now in the mix as a newer god to the game. She's got a silence provided to it, along with Nox and Isis. There's going to be a lot of nopes for the Kings to deal with today. No, you can't use an ability. No, you can't survive. I'm excited to see how that plays out, but like you said, it's going to come down to how this Scream E-set in the jungle ends up playing off here. Bobby in the dual lane playing the Nox, though, alongside Stuart. The desk did touch on that's double magical in this area here, and we'll see how this plays out as the game continues of how the Kings end up itemizing to deal with the damage coming through.
I gotta say, Captain Twig on this Hebo pick, not opting to get the beads, does have the blink, so a lot of CC from the Scarabs roster. It's going to be very difficult to try to engage onto this pick unless you're just crushing wave immediately. You're going to have to play with your CC immunity very limited until that level 12 spot, so I wouldn't doubt that Scream's trying to get very aggressive onto this Hebo, at least in the early portions of the game.
I will say, when we get to objectives and team fights, expect the Kings to technically W key at their opposition here, because as we mentioned, the kind of squishier gods that they've got here, running for the backline is going to be the name of the game to take away the damage dealers and avoid a lot of the CC options and control that the Scabs are going to try and bring here. But can they do it in the right vein is going to be the question. I think that's one of the reasons why you even see Genex going for these purification beads early on, to make sure he can get away from some of that sustained control.
I would say so. And then looking at this solo lane again, we saw Variety go for that teleport as inbound gets very low in this duo. Going for the teleport. Last game sort of put him to an early deficit because of that teleport. No beads available, obviously getting ganked. Still getting poked out a little bit in that lane, so Variety's going to have to be very careful about his CC immunity as well. Teleport is going to be a little bit better for when you're getting poked out here. You can join the fray of the fight a little bit easier, but that beads, it's going to be a clutch if Scream is able to get some ganks off.
Well, right-hand side now you can see Variety getting aggressive up against Cleaner early on, looking for an invade on the blue buff, and Twig on the way as well. Blink is available for Captain Twig. On the left-hand side, Genex under a bit of pressure there, but blue buff still available here for the Kings to look at. Genex getting lower, out of mana, and Stuart looking for the chase, runs out of mana though, and on the right-hand side, Scary D brings down Twig as him and Variety were trying to get in here and steal away the blue buff. It ends up costing them first blood and giving the Cleaner the first kill of the game.
Yeah, when I look at the E-set versus Hebo matchup in the jungle, I just think infinitely more pressure on the E-set. The Spirit Ball alone is going to provide so much damage and CC. As Stuart has another chance this time. Not going to pick up Genetics once again. Very low on this Yemoja, but still having the juke shoes with that Riptide able to keep him just alive here. But that pressure in the jungle, as I mentioned, I think that this E-set just brings a little bit more right now.
Yeah.
So I think Twig going to have to play on the back foot just a little bit here.
Especially at level 4 as well, right? When Hebo does hit that level 5, there's a big power spike there. Sure, E-set gets a similar one, but it's very situational.
Right.
Less so than what we see from that crushing wave that you get from a Hebo. As now Twig tries to pick up some farm this right-hand side, looking for a gank on Scary D, who will use the beads and dash back to tower, but Variety still diving in looking for the kill. Needs Twig to get in support, but a little bit discombobulated there by the solo laner and the jungle. As left-hand side, Scream makes a great rotation in and finds a kill on Genetics.
Yeah, Scream recognizing that, hey, at least Scary D has the survivability. I don't have to help with that gank. I'm going to look towards the left side of the map where they already had a good amount of pressure. Now, putting your duo lane ahead as well, at least Scream gets credit for the kill, so now he he has a kill under his belt, can use that pressure elsewhere. But now I'm looking to see this E-set pretty much just roam at any point in the game and say, hey, I'm going to look for some pressure right now. You have the early lead.
An early silence, right, is what you're kind of looking for on that gank. The Dispel magic comes into play, trying to reduce the protections too, but also force the beads early in those skirmishes. Little unfortunate for your Kings, though. I mean, Variety and Twig were not on the same page exactly there, it felt like to me. If Twig would have kept on walking forward, they would have found that kill on Scary D under the tower, but the lack of communication between the two definitely shows a bit of a mismatch there in that solo lane and allowed Scary D to survive.
Yeah, credit to Variety for recognizing that they had the die potential there, because I certainly thought once Scary D just dashed away that fight was done. I mean, Variety knows this character. Variety knows how much damage Bologna can get off, so knowing how many tower shots to tank as well. Clutch play by Variety. Twig just not following here, but the blue buff once again. The crushing wave is available and has been started up.
Yeah, by the time they realize it, though, the blue buff's already taken down, and Variety and Twig just have to watch on and realize the blue is on the ground, but Variety's going to try and slow Scream back in if possible, and maybe even zone away Scary D from getting this blue buff if he can, as they don't exactly have eyes on Hebo just yet. But now that Twig shows his face in the mid lane, you'll probably see Scary D start to wander back towards his blue buff.
Yeah, I was going to say, Scary D could probably just ult the wave from a distance and come back and say, are you going to miss this, farmer, or are you going to, you know, zone me off my blue? Either way, is able to pick that one up. Has the Soul Eater, 31 stacks on it already. Once we see that Soul Eater fully stacked, we'll probably see Scary D start to win this lane pretty heavily. The amount of sustain that Kleena has, you don't really want to box with the Bologna, but just poke from a distance, and then you're going to drop the Veils on the wave. That's sort of the style of play that Kleena has, just like this. And then look at the HP bars. It's going to keep going in your favor as Stewart gets trapped.
In a bit of trouble here. We'll avoid the stun, though. Eat the damage from the ultimate from Genetics, but inbound now into the fray. Riptides away does Genetics, and Bobby will lock Netroid in place and force the beads. Scream giving chase with a wing gust with the movement speed bonus. Gets the silence off too. Spirit Ball off the mark, and Netroid back to safety. No turnaround coming from the Kings here. No one in position to rotate over to keep the damage rolling and turn that fight around. If anything, pressure relieved, but it did cost Kings both sets of beads.
I mean, yeah, you do have the beads early. The re-engage is here. You're going to have to hit every shot of this Wing Gust, and one misses. So Netroid still is going to live underneath this tower. Getting the beads early and the Caledonian Boar, you'd think a kill would happen, but no, the CC was not good, and I think inbound just off the mark with those Shadow Locks. Captain Twig recognizing as well that the kill potential probably gone in that lane, so just going to go for the farm instead of helping out over here. But still, great play by Netroid and Genetics, able to juke out the full brunt of that CC. That could have been a double kill.
Really could have been, but at the end of the day, Kings surviving there makes this still a closer game than it once was. I will say I think the Scarabs are definitely looking to utilize this early game as much as they can before Hebo really gets into the fray here. And obviously the double carries of Medusa and Artemis as well. That's a lot of damage between those three alone. And you've still got great frontline tankiness with Variety on this Bologna, who's going to take on Scream again and force the beads thanks to the rally.
Yeah, the Eagles rally is down now. Scary D did have to use the beads, so the 1v1 potential is going down just a little bit. As I mentioned, though, that Soul Eater finally fully stacked, so we're going to see some big sustain, not only out of Variety, who has the Death's Toll and the Bludgeon, just a lot of clear there, but from Scary D, a lot of abilities that are just going to be continually proccing on this wave. As Baronic may be in trouble here, doesn't realize Captain Twig's right around the corner, but still a lot of damage in his own right on this Uller.
Honestly, it could have gone either way between Big Man Tings and Baronic there. Whoever found the lucky point at first, and Inbon going to get the beads out of Tings again. All these silences, all these roots, they're really going to cause problems for Kings to consistently use these beads. And if they can keep them off rotation, it's hard for the Kings there to set up for a goal for a Pyromancer potentially. But Twig, looking for a Greater Scorpion, steal away, and does successfully do so. Eats the silence and Scream and Inbound not happy about that. Twig going to try and use that wet paper to fall back to safety, but Scary D's waiting for him again. Half health already. Big Twig has to use his ult, but where's he going to go? Still in the corridor, and Scary uses his ult to pick up the kill. Now they look for the invade on the blue buff, and Variety has his ultimate available. May need it if that Spirit Ball hits. Still knocked down to half health already. Blue buff is still a threat for them, but they're going to dive underneath here. Genetics is going to be a little bit late to the party. Great ultimate from Variety, buying time. Tiggs is here too, but they missed the ultimates on everybody. Scary D isolated and alone though, but Variety does fall down. Scary D slips inside the walls and escapes as well. And Kings are just too late to the pie.
I will say, Scary D must have been practicing a lot of Kleena in the meantime. He looks like a completely different person on this character.
It was all jokes, bro. It was all jokes. That's what I was doing.
Yeah, now he's able to hit the ult, just predicting the crushing wave. Obviously, it's going to go in a pretty linear path, so you know where that's going. But then able to finish that kill on Variety, then dive back through the wall, knowing exactly how much HP needed to escape from that one. So completely different gameplay out of this Kleena from Scary D, looking a lot better. And again, The silence on inbound was off. He missed the Shadow Lock once again on this Nox, but it didn't matter that time. They had the damage.
I gotta give credit where it's due as well to how Scarabs dove that tower, because they avoided Genetics' ultimate and, for the most part, big man Tings. Losing both those ultimates in that engagement and not really catching anyone. Very unfortunate situation for the Kings, and find Scarabs again with about a 1,700 gold lead. I expected this to be a different tale of the tape, honestly, looking at how things have played out so far.
Twig has 0 player damage. He has not hit a single ability this game.
Has he needed to? Yes, he has, but he's not a chance to.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're silenced and running for your life most of the time, he has done a good job farming, though. If anything, he was slightly ahead before that last engagement over Scream, and still is now, I feel like. Actually, I think they're even paced, but look at this, left-hand side. Scarabs are going to pull the Gold Fury. They're taking the game by the scruff of the neck now with the control they've had, and are going to continue to extend their gold lead here. And you can see the Kings are just not in a position to contest this one now as we approach the 10-minute mark.
Yeah, it's a huge Gold Fury to start off this power spike that has already been in favor of the Scarabs. Even Stewart getting pressure. Artemis, not the best early game damage, but still has some great boxing potential into this Oleron matchup, at least early game. And it's just looking that, I mean, the Artemis has to sit under tower at the moment, which is a hard thing to do because your clear is not the best. Late game, though, hopefully a much different story for Netrioid. Hasn't really got to get active. The mid laners as well haven't been too aggressive, but...
Oh, Inbound taking a ton of damage in mid there. Will use his ult to try and buy time. Riptide free, but look at Twig just got deleted by Scream and Baronic on the backside of that fight. Meanwhile, Inbound still survived as the Kings have to fall back again. Variety and Scaredy rotating towards this mid lane here now. And Variety will just force back, but great little pickup again from the Scarabs off King's aggression.
Yeah, 0-3 for the jungle of the Camelot Kings right now. This Hebo not online just yet. You really need some items. You have the one-shot potential, but can you survive when you have 2 members on top of you? Not at the moment. Twig's still trying to get the farm game going as Baronic has climbed to a solid 1-level lead in the mid lane.
Do you like this Stone of Binding as he actually on E-set for Scream this game? Obviously, it's going to give him a bit of protection, but more importantly, continue the amount of damage because E-set brings so much CC control. And speaking of her, here she is in the solo lane again. Spirit Ball won't connect. The silence afterwards will, because the Eagles rally was there, but Scaredy can't find the angle with that Eye of Death coming through. Now Twig on the right-hand side tries to support for the blue buff, and the focus is on towards Scream and Baronic from Genex here, who's dropped towards half health again. Kings are trying to be reactionary to what Scarabs put out here, but not finding much.
Yeah, we're seeing a 4v4 underneath the tier 1 tower. Pyromancer is still up. If you want to fight over an objective, you certainly can, but that is not the case right now. This started with a gank onto Variety, and then it's turned into a solid 8-man fight around this tier 2 tower, but unfortunately no one is going to fall here, just going to back off at the moment. But I think if Scream was able to just time his CC a little bit better, get those Stone of Binding procs, and actually do the damage that he needed to, that gank could have went a little bit differently, but great timed Eagles Rally by Variety to make sure to get out there. But as you were mentioning, I think this item just very solid as Genetics does not let this go down.
Inbound going to use his ultimate to avoid Tusky there coming through from Netroid, so ult for ult exchange definitely favors the side of Scarabs, I would say, in that. But good use from Bobby to realize what his situation was going to be in there.
Yeah, I think recognizing that he's trying to steal away just the last bit of that obelisk, not going to work. Of course, the Kings may not be ahead in farm, but they are still the Kings of confirming this objective. So once again, Genetics is going to pick up that Indra Scepter, just adding to a little bit of his DPS here. But it still looks like Captain Twig is trying to get active. He does have that double flat pen built already. Divine Rune and Spear of Desolation, and Scaredy dashes in.
And that dash being down, Variety would have told him that. Bead's already used by Scaredy, and he's against the wrong wall to get away. Great Aegis, though, to avoid the damage out from the ultimate from Twig. But now the player damage is there, I would say, for Captain Twig. But Inbound locks Variety inside, sets up Scream for an easy kill. And now Twig trapped in an awkward spot too, will be wing gusted down, tries to return some damage. But with Baronic on the way, he's going to fall anyway. 7-1 now, the Scarabs lead. And still Cleaner looking like she should be on for a 100% win ratio in the Pro League.
Yeah, but Baronic is going to lose his red buff because of this rotation he's made. I'm sure he's going to be pretty happy, though, because he does get the Pyromancer as his tier 1 tower is going to fall. Tings still trying to match some of that farm pressure. Level 15 on this Medusa. Given how this game has gone, surprising that the highest XP in the game is this Medusa.
And also look at Variety, still a level lead over Cleaner here on the Scaredy. So you can see the Kings are really prioritizing early on the farm more than anything else, realizing they need to get towards the late game to really stand a shot in this one. I'm still waiting for the Kings' hidden strategies of, you know, pre-season to turn up because I've not seen any so far. And if it's going to be this Hebo, it's not paid off so far.
Yeah, they did say they had some secret strats in store right now. Maybe the option is let's try to, you know...
Wait for week 3?
Yeah, maybe just get as much farm as we can. We're not going to come online until week 3. But right now, I think they are recognizing that, number one, our comp probably has a better late game. We have double ADC and a Hebo. I mean, that alone should give you some room for just saying, hey, we're going to have a great time in about 20, 25 minutes. Let's just dial it back. But they haven't really been dialing it back. They've sort of still looked for these engages. Twig is still trying to find ganks, so I don't think they're really sitting on their hands, so to speak. They're still trying to force the issue. It's just not working out.
I think they should continue to keep the pressure rolling if they can, the Scarabs here, just because of the state of their composition as the game goes on. However, if you're a Dragons fan right now, obviously they play a little bit later on today, but if the Dragons are watching, they'll be quite happy. They've got to face off against the Kings later on this weekend. And looking at how this one's gone, the Kings will be like, hey, sorry, the Dragons will be like, hey, I guess we'll be in a good spot against the Kings. We've still got that one to look forward to. And Kings still need to bounce back here. Down 1-0 already in this best of 3 and find themselves with a back up against the wall. The gold isn't terrible just yet, but this Fury could spell a bigger impact. Silence and Spirit Ball hitting onto Genetics there. Primal Fury dropping lower, and the Scarabs get the Primal Fury. But can they get away from danger? Inbound on the forefront, gonna get hit by the Riptide, dashes away after the fact. Another Riptide connects, the Medusa ult used by Big Man Tings, and Inbound still gets away. Twig does step up and get some water spout damage off, but it's not going to be enough to find a kill. Variety wants this, though. Look at him leading the team forward, blinking in, looking towards Scream. That's the focal point, and Big Man Tings is there to secure the kill. They'll get a red buff as well, but it was still a Fury in favor of the Scarabs.
Yeah, just a little bit of sloppy play by the Scarabs. After the objective, after you've used so many ultimates on the Fury, you don't have to defend your red buff. It's one buff, but now you've lost your jungler, and Variety is still going to stop these backs here. You're probably going to lose a tower in left lane as well, all because you didn't just back up after the objective. So now there was a little bit of a gold spike, but the Camelot Kings are answering back.
Yeah, tier 1 tower on the left will fall down to those two, even that minion wave there. Stuart won't be able to do much about it, but it does allow the Kings to feel a little bit better about the state of play there. That little pick towards Scream, a big one in the tail of it, just to shut him down a little bit and give that gold over towards Big Man Tings, who's at level 17 in this mid lane now. So you can see where the majority of the Kings' focus will be is on what can Medusa get out in these engagements.
And Big Man Tings is not opting to go for that full red damage build that Veronic has on this Ullr, the Transcendence Crusher. Titan's Bane on one side, but Big Man Tings is essentially just building like an ADC. Crusher Transcendence and then into an auto-attack Shred build. That's why we saw Inbound get so poked out there. Not much physical defense right now, just a fully stacked Gauntlet of Thebes. So Big Man Tings is going to be shredding pretty much everyone on the map right now as Scary D is starting to get ganked here again.
Now Scary D still under pressure as the damage from Variety coming through. And remember the Frostbound Hammer just applying constant CC. Scream jumps on in here towards Variety, and Variety under some pressure, still alive. But Twig, who was there to support, under pressure from Inbound. Now Big Man Tings and Genetics on scene. The Medusa ultimate skirted by the Scarabs there, away from the danger. Pressure relieved, but a couple of relics were consumed.
Yeah, Variety does not have the beads, so if any of these Nox combos land, or if any of these Spirit Balls land from Scream, it would be a dangerous situation. Variety just able to juke out pretty much all of the CC on the map as Scary D is going to try to dive Twig here. Going to have to hit the ult.
Nailed it, but the great ultimate from Twig to avoid that damage there and immune himself from the danger. Still the chase is on. Inbound, wants that kill, and he finds Variety in the jungle, but can't find the route thanks to the dash from the Bellona. As you look at the comp, though, that Kings have got, it's starting to get to that late game stage. Now the carries, level 18 and 17. And with the Kasari being built by Variety here, you can see their focus is what can these carries do when we get there. At the moment, Netroid hasn't been able to get involved in the fight, but Fire Giant's starting to tingle in the back of my head now, where Scarabs should be looking.
Yeah, absolutely. They still have that circle of protection, the best confirm on the map at the moment. You still have a blink crushing wave, but if Scream is playing on point, there's no way he should be getting out confirmed. Variety's making the rotation over. Remember, there's no objectives over here except for a tier 2 tower, so I don't know why they're putting this much pressure. The Kings are getting aggressive.
Yeah, blinking from Variety, they're just pushing Scream back and keeping the pressure rolling on, but that blink didn't really come from naught. However, the Fury up in about a minute and a half's time here as they look to steal away more of these obelisks on the left-hand side.
Do you think that's why Variety rotated over, just to make sure they could get that obelisk?
Maybe Genetics was just like, hey, dude, I need my obelisk, right? Like, I got to go and get it. Like, you've got to come and help me out. And that's why we use Blink, just to secure it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to use both your teleport and your blink to confirm the obelisk, I mean, maybe the Kings have the right idea here. They are putting a lot of stock into this relic. I mean, this objective.
Now, the one thing that I'm going to see from the Scarabs, though, is like fight control of who they choose to focus, because at the moment they've done a great job on Hebo. If they keep getting distracted by the Hebo, though, these two carries will pop off. However, if they switch attention, Hebo could always come back into play. Variety, Spirit Ball, Surrounded, Silence, CC Chain to Hell, but will escape with the Eagles rally for now. The rest of the Kings trying to support now and rally round. Genetics is here, gets a good Riptide onto screen that forces him straight to Big Man Tings' ultimate. And now the ultimate used by Genetics will zone away the Scarabs. Unfortunately, Twig tries to wrap around the back, finds an avenue. Doesn't have Blink available here. The knock-up does connect, and the Kings are continuing chase here, but Scarabs are well aware. Good Riptide again from Genetics, pulls Stuart back in. Stuart's on an island, does drop his ultimate and get as much damage off as he can, but will fall down to Captain Twig. Next on the list could be Inbound. He'll dash away, but now one more Riptide could do it. Genetics waiting for that Omni to come through, looking for the Riptide, but the silence slows him down. Instead, he'll speed up his team, and that's 3 quick kills in the way of the Kings that could now turn into an FG.
Yeah, the Crushing Wave is still available, and it looks like no one from the Scarabs is sticking around here. Only maybe Scary D could make it in time, and it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. So this Fire Giant will go down for the Camelot Kings. I was looking, because obviously Scream got hit by that Petrify. He opted to go for Blink Shell. So no form of CC immunity on this ESET. Maybe just didn't put a lot of stock into the CC of this team. But if you're going to look into a Petrify, you're going to get blown up there. So not a great turn for the Solar Scarabs. The Camelot Kings, however, finally got some gas under their feet.
Notice how they choose not to go for Pyromancer there, because they realize they can go for this Oni Fury instead, with the Fire Giant around with all 5 of them too. This is go time for the Kings now with these carries. We saw how that ended up playing out. Scarabs invest too much in Variety and don't find a kill, and then Kings are able to rally and punish them for their discretions, and now we're in a state where Kings now have a gold lead for the first time this game.
Yeah, and I think their team fight presence is a lot better too. Now that we're looking at these ADCs that are getting online, Netrioid already has Silver Branch, has that Wind Demon now. Looking over at BMT, got the Death's Embrace. These are huge upgrades for these 2 ADCs on the side of the Camelot Kings. If the Scarabs couldn't win fights then, it's going to be much harder to do it now.
Very going to be high execution for Scarabs from this point forward, though. They had the lead in this game in moments. They were ahead in the early game. They kept that ball ticking along quite nicely until a couple of bad mistakes in that solo lane have now cost them and given Kings a window. Oni minions now pouring left, middle, and right-hand side. Looks like the Kings are going to group up on the right, though, and look for this tier 2 tower, the easiest one. Keep an eye on Genetics, looking for those Riptides again. It's been a nuisance for the Scarabs to deal with.
Yeah, my eyes are also on Variety, who's wrapping around here. Doesn't really think...
He don't care.
Yeah, he's not worried about any sort of damage here. He's seen how much damage the Scarabs can do, and even 4v1, they were not able to kill this Bellona, so I don't think he's too worried, just showing some face so they can't defend this tier 2 tower.
Yeah, Variety just being a distraction here in the jungle as Scary D will meet him there. Opens up the window for that tier 2. Now the Kings transition towards the middle lane. Oni minions are down in that middle lane, though, so it will be an auto endeavor, but someone has to go to left-hand side soon from the Scarabs, otherwise that tier 2 tower will fall. And if the Kings sense that, they could take a 5-on-4 in the mid lane.
Yeah, looks like Genetics is trying to position to get a nice River's Rebuke here, but no one who can get caught is stepping too far up. Obviously, Inbound could just jump into Baronic and jump out if they need to, but the siege begins.
Big Riptide there onto Inbound as well, and now that tier 2 falls down. Obviously, 5v4, Scarabs can't defend, as Stuart had to focus on that left-hand side. So Kings are using this Fire Giant here just to strip the map from right-hand side all the way to left. And we're going to be left with just Phoenixes and probably about a minute of FG to play with unless we see a fire this tier 2.
Yeah, they're playing the game exactly how they need to, recognizing they don't have to do anything too risky. Just try to get as much gold on the map as this tier 2 tower is being looked at. The board gets dropped.
Oh, a lot used there. An Inbound caught and he's dash away. He's going to be bursted down after the fray. Now a 5-on-4 with the whole team chasing him from Kings. Flanking from Varieties. Genetics drops down the ultimate 2 to zone them away from the Phoenix. And the Kings with 2 ADCs strip it in seconds. Now Stuart trapped in an awkward spot, gets hit by the big ult from Variety. And Relic's used as well. Still Stuart under pressure from the Riptide. No support from the Kings just yet. But once the carries get there with BMT and Netroid, another kill, and now a killing spree for the mid laner out of the Camelot Kings.
Looks like Genetics is just going to heal up the squad here, and the mid Phoenix is going to be next on the menu. I thought maybe they'd look to go for that end because of the double hunters, but still playing smart as usual. The Camelot Kings very methodical in their play style here.
Definitely a tale of two tapes here. The early game, all Scarabs, but once we got to that mid-late game and these carries came online and the grouping happened, the Kings have started to run away with it. Middle Phoenix now down, right hand being attempted. Oh, here come the Scarabs, though. 4 members strong, trying to delay this. The Phoenix is still alive for now, but the front line is the one absorbing all this damage. Look at Variety's health bar. He ate a ton of damage there, and he's still over 60%.
Yeah, 3 Phoenixes down, double ADC late game. You have a Hebo as well. It's looking very solid for the Camelot Kings, and I will say, we haven't seen too many teams able to come back from a deficit like this, so the Solar Scarabs have their work cut out for them. I will say Scaredy finished that Mantle of Discord and upgraded that Bluestone Brooch. A little bit of damage and survivability. Stewart still level 18, looking at the ADC for the Scarabs, not able to pump out enough damage to really deal with Variety. We saw he just dives so freely in the backline, and Inbound's level 15 right now.
Taking into account that we saw the focus on Hebo early game, and he didn't get any damage off, as you said, for Captain Swig. He's 2 levels up on the E set. That's been a big factor in this early stage. It was a great bait in a weird way, but you look at it from a King's point of view, it made the Scabs go, hey, let's focus Hebo, make sure he's not in the game. Well, because of that, the rest of the team have been unchecked. The mid and the left-hand side of this map wasn't really looked at from the Scarabs too much, but when they did, they weren't successful. They tried a couple of times in dual lane to find kills, but didn't manage to find one, and that's why we find ourselves with the Kings in a 10k gold lead now at 25 minutes in, and all 3 Phoenixes down, the Titans exposed.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen BMT under any sort of pressure this whole game. Both relics available, probably have been for the last 20 minutes or so, as you said. Putting all your stock into the Hebo, not wanting to get that online, you accidentally let a Nitrioid and a Big Man Tings on these duo lane, or on these ADCs, both go undying towards the late game. These Hunters are online.
Inbound still trying to step up and cause problems for the Kings, but the front line's a little bit tankier now. Genetics, for the most part, avoids using the heals, avoids using the stuns. It's very much Riptide, Riptide, Riptide. Reposition my team, reposition the enemy team, and try and force out some beads or catch some dashes away. The fight begins, though, as the Kings just dance at the FG, and Scarabs realize if they're going to contest, they have to do it soon, as the minions are going to start pushing down these lanes. All 3 are positioned about tier 2 towers now, and Kings are just trying to buy time. They're trying to wait for those minions to push in and force someone back to defend. And as soon as they do, as soon as Stewart gets spotted, it's going to be go time for the Kings once more.
Yeah, the Camelot Kings really don't want to try to 50-50 the objective again. He said ult is available at the moment, but the fight, they're going to have to push a 4v5 knowing that all of these Phoenixes are down. I wouldn't be surprised if the Kings just go for it now.
Inbound tries to use the ultimate here to steal away or at least reduce some damage and tankiness. Variety engagement with the Eagles rally in the backside. Twig, though, meanwhile, getting all in by Scream, but Scream does not survive the damage from Big Man Tings, and now it's a 4-on-5. Fire minions left, fire minions right, and Scaredy is stuck in the jungle with the Greater Scorpion and Netroid's basic attacks. Veronic forced away, inbound low, and Variety on this Bellona has caused so many problems, I feel like, from the get-go. He was focused in the early game, but look at him just absorb the damage and keep marching on forward. I think you can't give him this guard. He's going to go into the Titan room on his own here as the rest of his team get the Fire Giant.
Yeah, Variety probably could 1v1 that Titan at the moment, just given his build. That Death's Embrace would be pretty clutch, but not worried at all against the members of the Solar Scarabs. These 3 are never going to kill this Bellona, and now all of the Kings are finally grouping up here for the push. Once again, double ADC onto this Titan. You still have Hebo damage. It's not going to look good.
Well, in comes Genetics now trying to absorb, and a lot of these autos and these abilities off the mark from the Scarabs at the tail end here. It was a high execution composition, and Kings punished them for it. The Kings find the win after being down for a considerable amount of that game. But more importantly, Cleaner is no longer 100% win ratio in the SPL. Well, at least in solo lane. In jungle, she's still 100%.
That's true. I mean, full damage Cleaner does do some things, but that game, as you said, they had a very high skill cap comp, and if they missed any sort of abilities, their team fight sort of went down the hole. And unfortunately, Inbound dropped a few CCs there, and then the fight just, they weren't able to find the picks.
What do you change for game 3 then for the Scarabs? Game 1 goes so well, a bit more of a traditional composition from them. Right. Game 2, they get a bit spicy, let's put it that way. Didn't pay off. What do you do game 3?
I would say probably try to draft a little bit more late game presence, because you had the early game, your team fight late wasn't as good.
Wasn't as good at all. Back to the evens now, 1-1 all tied up, 1 game to go. We'll find out who wins after the break.
Number 2 started off strong for the Solar Scarabs, but at the end of it, it's the Camelot Kings who come out on top to tie us and bring us to a game number 3 in our first set here in week number 2. And a lot of that, Mifflin, really felt like it came out of the solo lane there. Early focus on for the Scarabs was shutting down Variety, making sure to keep damage over there towards that solo lane. But as the game kept going on, the Scarabs never gave up that mentality. They still said, okay, let's keep dumping damage into Variety until the point where Variety didn't care about the damage they threw at him anymore.
No, eventually your tank is just going to be tanky enough to survive all that dive. The Solar Scarabs, I'd almost written off this game at that 10-minute mark because the lead was so dominant for the Scarabs yet again. But the Camelot Kings, ever the squad of macro farming and mental fortitude, were able to hang in there until the point where this draft really started to start working out for them. And as you said, a lot of focus on Variety in a lot of these engagements. Namely this one, you see a 4-man dive on a Variety into a wombo combo, turnaround, Scream falls down, and then from there, Captain Twig essentially allowed to free cast for the rest of that team fight, and potentially even the rest of that game. Habois did not seem to be a focus for the Solar Scarabs, and when you allow a Habois to do what Habois does, it's damage. He does damage. That's the whole thing. He does a lot of it, too.
He does a lot of it. Big Man Tings does a lot of damage. This game ends with a 6.0 KDA here in that mid. And this Medusa, as the game started out, was a little bit of focus. Big Man Tings is taking a lot of damage early on. But when we get into these late game team fights, I mean, you can see just from this clip alone, that's the only instance of damage that Big Man Tings was worried about at all. And for most of these fights, Tings ended up going essentially untouched. A 4-0-4 for him to close out this game. Nitroid 3-0-3 over on the Artemis over into the duo lane here. So the Camelot Kings are able to rally back here in game number 2, tie us up, and now send us over to game number 3. And with a loss like this, you know, as you said, the Scarabs had a pretty nice lead to start things out, and then the Camelot Kings turned this one around. This has kind of been the tale of the Scarabs as of going all the way into even phase number 3 in Season 8, where they'd get this nice early game lead, then they don't quite know what to do with it, and then late game they're not able to close out some of these team fights here. But we have seen lights where the Scarabs are able to close these games out.
We have, and when they are able to, it's generally very fast games. I like to equate like modern-day Solar Scarabs very similar to what we saw from the Jade Dragons at their peak, where it's, hey, we're either going to dominate a game, and it's going to get close at the 26-minute mark, or it's going to go a little bit past that, and things are going to start to struggle from there. The Solar Scarabs, I think, can still lean on their playstyle. This is 2 games in a row now where they dominate the early. It's just whether or not they can transition it into an actual dub.
We'll see if they can transition a dub here in game number 3. Picks and bans ready to go, and not much is going to change, at least on the side of the Scarabs, for their first ban, Dodgy. Still, that first one out, Camelot Kings will continue to keep the Ardio out of the hands of the Solar Scarabs, and maybe just keep this Ardio out of hands in general here. I mean, this guy has been performing exceptionally well over in that solo lane since our rise back in season number 8. And it seems the Camelot Kings aren't going to change up much of their bans here. I mean, these were the problem 2 gods, really, for them in game number 1, this AMC and this Ardio. They're going to look to reprise that and make sure to ban it away here in game number 3, just like they did in game 2.
Yeah, just keeping those hot pieces away from the Solar Scarabs, I think, a very good answer. But now the Solar Scarabs have had a game of practice of playing without those. I'm sure they'd have already made their adjustments. Slaney, ever the veteran coach, can likely try and shine some light on where the Solar Scarabs falter in game 2, so not concerned too much for them. I think we're looking at a very good game from here on out. That said, the Camelot Kings will likely want to change some things up. They are a late-game focused team. They do like to take that slower pace, but this is twice now where they've fallen significantly behind in the early phases. And when you fall as far behind as they have, it almost feels as if at times your hands are no longer on the levers of power. You're no longer the one dictating the fate of this match. And I'm sure the Camelot Kings want to be the ones in the driver's seat. I'm expecting some shift-ups from them.
So far, the Scarabs will change up their momentum, their motto, their momentum. I tried to combine a couple of words there.
Yeah, it's all good,
but
man.
I got there. And Kleena will be banned away. Now, this is a first pick by the Scarabs in game number 2, one that worked really well to start this game out, but as the game started petering on later, the Kleena was starting to fall off there. And now a Bellona thrown here, so 2 new solo laners going to be popping themselves up here in game number 3, taking a shot at Variety there against that Bellona ban.
Yeah, the Bellona ban makes sense if you really, really want to be prioritizing the solo laner in some of these late-game team fights. Bellona, very, very survivable. Has tons of block stats built into the kit, has great disarms to try and target out some of Scream's favorite gods, things like the Kali. Very hard time finishing off some of those kills when a Bellona's on the other side. Could be that the Kings decide to ban out the Kali themselves. They do not. Instead, it is the Cabrakan. So Solar Scarab Scream Unleashed can go towards one of his favorite picks, but does not. Instead, Erlong Shen, I believe likely slated for the jungle, will not have to contend with all those block stacks and disarms, And we've seen what this Erlong Shen can do in the early in Scream's hands.
Yeah, we saw what it could do in game number 1. We'll see if he can reprise that once again in game number 3. But this Kotli, I mean, the Kotli was banned away in game number 1. Since then, the Kings haven't really cared to ban that one away. They've been going for some of the other problems that have arisen from the Scarabs just in this set and then their last couple of sets there. So it's interesting to see that the Kotli has just kind of gone to the wayside here. But that also leaves Gilgamesh open. That was the god that was being banned away from the Kings by the Scarabs in games 1 and 2. Same with the Khepri. So now there's an opportunity where the Kings can pick up one or both of those guys that were taken away from them.
Yeah, I would be surprised if they bypass the Gilgamesh, because I feel like Gilgamesh has a very strong matchup specifically into Erlong Shen, in that Erlong Shen telegraphs his engage. You can just drop kick him away, or if he starts winning out on some of these auto attack trades, you can just drop kick him away. Or if he's really struggling to stick to a target, wins the Shamash, acts as a very good peel tool. So no complaints from me. The Camelot Kings take one of the best in slot hunters in Medusa, the most aggressive hunter in the game. Also with a phenomenal bit of team fight presence, but also Gilgamesh, just a top pick all around. But it's a fun combo between Medusa and Gilgamesh, and it's something I talked about briefly in the past. It's called visual noise. And because SMITE is a third-person MOBA, you're looking over the shoulder, essentially, it is very difficult when team fights get noisy to see some of these high-impact cooldowns. Specifically, the combo of Winds of Shamash spawning a literal sandstorm in the middle of a team fight makes it pretty difficult to see. Medusa channeling that Petrify could make it a little bit harder for the Solar Scarabs to deal with some of these cooldowns.
Well, on the side of the Scarabs, they're going to pick up a little bit of extra dive now with Camazotz and Erlong Shen as their first two, and then a Zeus, a god that's been making his way at least to the second round of bans by both of these teams. He will not go that far this time. Third pick now out of Solar Scarabs, and a little bit of a different look from Boronic. He's been going more towards these hunters over in the mid lane now. He's been going towards a pseudo-magical hunter. I can't fully say that Zeus is a magical hunter, doesn't really build into the rings like the other ones do. With all that extra attack speed he gets from that shield, sometimes it does feel like he really does become one.
He really shreds down these objectives. Again, stacks up to 40% attack speed once you have that second ability fully maxed out, which means that objective's probably going to have a hard time when Zeus is around. But with all that said, generally when you have a Zeus in your composition, you want to go for King Protection style comps, where you can just have him act in the back line and make it very difficult for anyone to close gap towards him. You've got two great frontliners for the Solar Scarabs, but it's not a protection style frontline. This is a spearhead. Erlong Shen and Camazot's going to act as dive for their team, should be able to close gap to whoever it is the Camelot Kings decide to draft for mid lane, but not a whole lot of peels just yet for the Solar Scarabs mid laner.
There will be a Khepri for the final pick on that Camelot King. So Gilgamesh and Khepri that were banned in games 1 and 2 will end up making it now here onto the Kings draft in game number 3. And their bans are going to be used over towards inbound. Umoja and Sylvanas both targeted out here. The Kings not going to allow inbound to get one of his better picks in the Sylvanas and one of his more rising good picks here in this Umoja. Didn't have a whole lot of success in Season 8, but ever since the World Championship and then coming into Season 9, he's been able to make some great strides on this god. And instead, now the Solar Scarabs will use their couple of bans over towards the mid lane, taking away Hell and the Morrigan from the Camelot Kings. This Medusa, we did see it go into the mid lane in game number 1, or game number 2, I'm sorry. Could still be the same here in game number 3. The Kings holding on to their final pick.
Yeah, they are. So we will keep guessing on the Medusa going forward. ESET locked in for the Solar Scarabs. Could potentially be for support. Could potentially go into the jungle, have your Erlong Shen flex into support himself. So very curious. I think it is likely going to be ESET and Heimdall holding it down in the duo lane. And it is decent peel potential. The Dispel Magic going to give Zeus an HP shield in some of these team fights. You're able to drop damage mitigation in a massive circle, as well as a burst of healing for your team. The objective control similarly going to be very strong. But it is generally just going to be ESET acting as that peel. And the Camelot Kings have got very strong dive between Gilgamesh and Cerberus together, and even ranged engagement potential from this Persephone. Could be a hard game for Boronic to get the ground running on this Zeus. But this is another Solar Scarabs draft that is fielded by an Erlong Shen. Another draft where if they are able to establish dominance in the early portions of the game, could very easily start to run away with it because of some of that objective control that we've already highlighted. Not only one of the best, if not bar none, the best confirmation tool in the game with Circle Protection, but also some phenomenal objective burn potential. I would like to call Erlong Shen essentially just another hunter. He just auto-attacks so much damage. Mannequin's generally going to act as an additional source of burn on these objectives, but similarly Zeus, very good in those scenarios, great space control thanks to the Lightning Storm, and even Heimdall going to have a lot of presence around these objectives and a lot of safety in his own right.
Yeah, It will be a Persephone as the last pick there by the Camelot Kings, as you mentioned earlier. A god hasn't seen a whole lot of success as far as the SPL is concerned. 0% win rate on the few games that she has been picked up at this point. But over in levels like the SCC, this god has been popping off. I mean, she's been going nuts out here. Just so far hasn't seen that same reprise in the top end of play. But how do you feel about that match? I mean, the Persephone versus the Zeus, especially when you throw Zeus Erlong as a combo versus that Persephone Gilgamesh. I mean, how does that 2v2 kind of pan out?
I don't think the Camelot Kings are going to try and take that 2v2 too often. Zeus should have the majority of pressure in the lane. That shield toss, just auto-attack combo to clear these waves, very consistent. You don't generally want to fight around these mid-camps either because Chain Lightning is just going to apply damage regardless when there are those neutral camps that you're fighting over. So it's more so about whether or not, if they are taking fights in the mid, the Camelot Kings that is, if they can get the jump on this Zeus, if they can just throw out that Grasp of Death from a range and have Gilgamesh do the rest of it on his own. Because if Gilgamesh and Persephone are stacked on each other, well, that's just Chain Lightning.
I mean, that would be easy damage out there for that Zeus. But the Kings, with this Khepri that was taken away from them so often, this is a pick that Genetics really likes to go for, especially when BMT loves to play these very kind of dive-heavy style of mages, these less than mobile kinds of characters out here. And usually it's been finding a lot of success. We saw a lot of kind of Khepri-Hera combos in the past by these two. How do you kind of feel about this Khepri to round out this Kings draft?
I am never going to be against a Khepri. Never once will I say Khepri doesn't fit into this draft. Scarabs Blessing is just a ridiculous ability because it legitimately changes how you can address a team fight. It's similar to Odin when he's at his peak, or these other gods that have to force you to have a paradigm shift. You got to think differently when they're on the map. Do you want to commit to a dive and shut down a Persephone? Generally, yes. Can you do it if Khepri's around? Probably not.
Well, it's going to be a tall task here for the Scarabs to break through this front line of the Camelot Kings. Who's going to be the one to come out on top here in game number 3 and take the win in our first set of the day? We'll throw it over to Hinduman and Trelly to find out.
Thanks so much, J-Mike. Yeah, let's see how this one plays out, because game 1, well, felt like all Kings to me. Game 2, a little bit more, well, I guess it's the other way around, really. Game 1, all Scarabs. Game 2, all Scarabs to a point. Can Kings get off to a good start here? Realistically, I'm expecting a lot of what Scarab's going to bring to the table, Trelly, to come through this Erlong Shen jungle.
Yeah, I like what they switched up with the draft coming from last game, but I think Genetics definitely took a shot at the Scarabs saying, hey, I'm picking your mascot. I'm taking this Khepri away from you. You guys are the Solar Scarabs. I'm going to beat you on this pick. So Genetics, a questionable move, you know, just saying.
Should that be illegal? Yeah. Do you reckon, like, should we have bans on teams being able to pick certain gods against teams? Like, you can't pick Khepri against Scarabs, you can't pick King Arthur against Kings.
I just think it's a flex. He's saying, I'm going to do it, and it is legal at the moment, so no fear from Genetics saying I'm taking that one away. But a good pick in its own right, obviously. With the Erlong, you have a lot of single target lockdown, so just being able to deny that pressure with the Scarab's Blessing, I think, is a pretty strong idea. But also, this time, ESET support from inbound. I have to harp on this whenever I see the ESET support, because it's not as great as a confirm tool as when you do build it damage. When you have this ESET with these tank items, you're sort of going back to the 50-50 state on these objectives. It is still very solid, but you can still get outbursted by, say, a full damage Persephone, things of that nature.
Definitely a weird sort of god to play in the support role, ESET, mainly because your style of play is to kind of sit back a little bit most of the time. Obviously, in the early game, you're poking. But as the game goes on, hold your Spirit's Ball, hold your silence, try and get the damage off and reduce their import. And as you can see, the turnaround there. But in mid lane, Scream gets aggressive on Twig early. Moronic can't thread the needle with those basic attacks, though, to find some follow-up damage and get a kill. So Blink consumed by Scream for a bit of pressure in that middle area.
Yeah, Captain Twig still does have the Blink available as Variety, once again, going for the teleport, not fearing the pressure of the Erlong. Game 1, Scream found some early kills onto Variety because of this Relic choice, but still, he values the mobility on this Relic, the fact that you can just go back to lane, even if you get poked out, come back. So we'll have to see if Scream decides to put some pressure there. Still looking at the mid lane at the moment, though. Able to kill BMT pretty easily if he doesn't hold on to that leap.
And Big Man Tings are just going to have to play around that quite consistently. In mid lane, though, Persephone versus Zeus. For the most part, I feel like Zeus has dominance of, I will step up to the wave, and if you want to fight, I'll fight. But Persephone has the ability to sit back and still farm effectively and safely.
Yeah, especially with those flowers, you can sort of just throw out the Bone Rush, that first ability on Persephone, and then just, you know, poke out if you need to. But this time, Scream is opting to look towards this duo lane, recognizing that Genetics on this Khepri does have the beats of Scary D, taking a lot of damage towards Variety.
Yeah, Scary D doing a good work, but the problem is that Variety is setting a trap here for Scary D, who beads and avoids the drop kick. But with his dash being down, there's no follow-up damage available. Can Variety find the damage? No, is the answer there. So gank consumed, but beads were consumed by Scary D.
Yeah, now Variety's able to back and just teleport back to lane. The pressure will continue as the blue buffs are spawning, but inbound, trying to steal away this purple buff here as Stewart just clears the wave effectively. And great grab by Genetics, just saying, hey, you're not going to be able to throw any spirit balls towards this buff, but the wave is going under.
The big idea there, Bobby's just trying to reduce it, but now he might have paid for that by sticking around. Rooted in place at the tail end of the Wingus coming through. Inbound has to use his shell, and he gets punished for sticking around too long. And Genetics waving bye-bye in the player cam in the corner for the attempt at stealing away that purple buff.
I love just some friendly trash talk, man. As long as the players are enjoying themselves and just getting aggressive, it's all fun and games. So
I've always had a way of like, it's not BM if it's true.
Exactly.
Right? So Genetics saying bye-bye there, he really did go bye-bye. So that's, you know, it's all fair. Back to the solo lane we go though, and both of them now level 5. This battle will start to mix up a little bit. It'll be a lot harder for either to kill the other as that fight continues. I expect to see Variety maybe use that ultimate a little bit more often, trying to force that bat out of hell out of Scary D so it's not available, or at least the beads to allow some rotations to come through.
I will say, Scary D did opt to go for that Death's Toll start here, so trying to get a little bit of healing from those auto attacks. Obviously, the cleave auto will give you a little bit more benefit there, but not going for the Warlocks. Oh, Baronic.
Oh, Big Man Tiggs didn't find the Grasp of Death. I like the combo, though. Drop kick the minion, set up the CC, and try and force it, but Baronic just skirts the border, gets away from danger, and ultimate down now for Big Man Tings in this middle area.
And Baronic held on to the beads there, no fear, realizing that, hey, this Grasping Death is it's a 50-50 shot. I juke left, he goes right, I go right, he goes left, or he just misses entirely. Baronic not really fearing that one as Captain Twig steals away a good portion of these offerings and Scream's farm.
Looking at that little play in the mid lane as well from Persephone's point of view, I think Big Man Tings was going for the damage by connecting. He could have hit the wall behind him and it would have guaranteed he would have rooted in place, but instead went for the damage to find the kill, and in the end didn't pay off. But now on this right hand side, Scary D and Scream battling against Variety and Captain Twig, and Variety going to pull Scream into a danger zone here. Scream's ultimate is on cooldown and he's got no health to regenerate there as Twig traps him inside. Good combo from the solo jungle from the Camelot Kings, but Big Man in mid keeping the pressure rolling on Baronic.
Looks like a lot of damage coming the way of the Zeus. They know this red buff is spawning, and Genetics is going to sit here waiting. Question is, Baronic does have the beads available, but are you going to walk into a big burst damage here? Let's find out.
Well, they didn't even wait for him. They get the beads early on with that route over the corner from Genetics. Think they could have let him step forward a time or two early if they wanted the kill. Instead, they will at least get the red buff on the left-hand side and the blue buff on the right-hand side. Starting to look a little bit more like the Camelot Kings of last year now, this game.
Yeah, I will say, usually when the Erlong is banned, the Gilgamesh is banned, and if you're going to let one through, you don't let the other one through. You try to get them both this time around. And it looks like Gilgamesh is getting the better end of these trades at the moment. Scream is trying to be aggressive with this Mannequin, and I think that fight where Captain Twig was able to get that kill on the Scream was started by him as well. That was a 1v1 he wanted to take.
Talking about Gilgamesh a little bit more, how do you feel about the randomness of the, the passive kicking into play? He gets a Masters game. Do we see that get utilized, or just sits at tier 1? Does he sell it? What would you do?
I would argue that is the worst item that you can get in that slot. Yeah, the best being tier 1 and tier 1 Pridwin, right? Yeah. That you get 10% cooldown pretty much for free. That's, I would argue, the best option, unless you're going to build into maybe a Katana tree, something like that. But the mask, probably the worst, because no one ever wants to go into the mask right now, especially in jungle. And so it's pretty much just giving you 100 health under.
I mean, 100 health's pretty good, for free.
Well, I mean, none of them are bad. That's just the worst.
True. If you had a choice, it wouldn't be that one. Scream trying to find an option on Genetics here. Root for root exchange there, but not a whole lot of damage. As Twig and Big Man Tings back to defend their half of the map. Red buff down for another while longer. The Obelisk could be a threat as Genetics walks into a danger zone here. Getting all in early and pops the ultimate early, but look at Baronic's health bar whittled down, and he does fall. So does Inbound as well. A crazy engage in the jungle from the Scarabs that looked like a pick on Genetics that ends up being 3 kills in favor of the Kings.
I will say, Baronic had the right mindset. Maybe hold that detonate off until the Scarab's blessing goes away, but in doing so, did not get the full brunt of that lightning storm damage off. Obviously, Genetics is able to beads and get away. And the detonate never came through because Baronic's dead. You can't do it from death. Unfortunate as Genetics steals away the offering and gets the Obelisk once again. Still the Kings of this neutral objective.
At least for now. We've had week 1 went. Kings definitely in the lead. The rest of the week will play out and see if we see a bit more focus from other teams towards these Obelisks too. Stuart and Netroid going to battle in the jungle there a little bit, but purple buff still goes towards Netroid as Stuart was trying to get fancy and steal one away. 5-0 though for the Kings in this game, and it's the first time I want to mention Captain Twig's name in the series as being the forefront of these engagements. He's found 3 kills.
Yeah, I will say Twig usually wanting to stray away from these early ganks, trying to just get as much farm as possible, fight towards that late game. This time, been kind of forced into these engagements, mostly started by the Scarabs, where Twig says, all right, I'll fight if I have to, and they're clearly going his way. 3-0 on this Gilgamesh, already has the Brawler's beatstick, and going into what I believe is going to be that Shogun's trying to get some attack speed here, as Variety sort of getting ganked, but there's no way they have any kill potential onto a level 10 Cerberus right now.
Variety just smelt the danger a little bit too soon for Scream. Scary D just telegraphed it a little bit too early. Whenever you see the solo lane step up and start getting aggressive randomly, you should have an inkling of like, maybe I'm getting ganked here. Blinking from Scream though finds Variety with no leap available. We'll have the ultimate. Baronic trying to burst him down quick, but Baronic gets turned on by Twig and Genetics too. And Twig able to just leap away. Scary trying to give chase under the tower with the Bat Out of Hell. If you can find some of these abilities, he'll find the kill and does so. And Genetics can only watch on. Genetics out of range of his jungler to be able to use the ultimate to revive.
He has
and
it.
Now he finds himself in an awkward spot, trying to buy as much time as possible. But with Inbound being there to follow up with his Spirit Ball too, Genetics is still going to fall down. Good juggle of aggro from the Scarabs to find themselves 3 kills for 1.
I really thought they were going to get baited by that Scarab's Blessing. It was not off cooldown yet for Variety's death or Twig's death, but of course, if you hold it on just long enough, it was able to bait them out.
I thought it was up, funny enough. I thought he had his ult available.
No, it was like 1 second off, and that's why they were like, hey, we can die this, his ult's down. But either way, Inbound does make the rotation over. You have the lockdown, and you had enough HP bars to juggle the tower aggro there, so 3 kills answered back for the Scarabs. Not rolling over just yet. It was 5-0, now it's 6-3.
Still a close game. First Gold Fury could come into play this game as well, especially when you look at like the compositions here of how the objectives go down. Kings don't have a ton of confirm on a Gold Fury, if I'm honest. I'd say Scarabs lean a little bit heavier with the Circle of Protection, with the Zeus having that detonate available. If they can find that window, Scarabs should be able to burst it down a bit quicker. But Genetics in mid, looking for a route on Baronic, finds it, doesn't have a dash charge available for that Abduct. Due to him using it to get in range, Baronic didn't use the beads, however, as now the red buff spawns on the left-hand side.
Yeah, just going to go get to the neutral farm game. I will say Twig did end up selling that mask to finish that Shogun's. Valued the power spike of getting that attack speed aura more than 100 health and the 100 mana that it provides.
Hey, if we see him run out of 100 mana, he's 100 mana short of his ultimate, we can look back and go, hey, should have kept the mask.
Yep, I'll finally be a mask believer if Twig ever either dies because he didn't have 100 health or needs the mana. But again, looking at Big Man Tings, has the double flat pen build already online. Level 12 for the Persephone. So the farm game of the mid laner of the Camelot Kings has been pretty solid here as we're seeing a gank happen in the left lane.
I will say some of that layout left-hand side, though, Scream looking at an action-packed chance onto Netroid. He uses the beads to get under his tier 1 tower. Doesn't have mana for his ultimate available. Mid lane pressure relieved as Bobby does get dropped low. Not low enough to secure a kill though, but beads exhumed there. Genetics using his and Netroid too for the Kings is definitely a favorable win for the Scarabs if they can find something off the back of it.
That was the second swing and a miss I've seen for Big Man Tings on this Grasp of Death, as finally a Pyromancer is getting pulled here. They have the Indra extra damage onto this Pyromancer, and it looks like no one is going to be close. So the Camelot Kings will take it, but look at this, the Gold Fury is being answered back.
I was going to say, you're going to go one way, make sure your pants aren't down on the other side, and they are. Gold Fury going to go to Scarabs, and that's a better win for the Solar Scarabs in this scenario. Look at the health bars too. If just one member of the Kings was there, Netroid was able to step up, might have found himself a kill or 2.
Yeah, Netroid with a kill and 3 assists still finds himself a little bit behind. Stewart has found a fair bit of pressure in this lane, at least in the XP department, has level 12 over Netroid, and Netroid pretty much has been sitting behind that tower, not really wanting to step up. So I think, at least in the dual lane portion of this game, Stewart is feeling a little bit more confident than he has in the past couple of rounds, but Scary D is making the rotation to mid lane.
Yeah, I was going to mention Scary D as well. Went for Transcendence this game. He's starting to go a bit more damage focus on the solo laner. Does mean he'll put out a ton more damage, but at the same time be squishier because of that too. So just see how that plays out between the two. Baronic, I thought for a second there was a little bit too close to that little plant that was coming through, but survives. His tier 1 tower, however, will not. And the map is starting to open up now in King's favor on this right-hand side. Both tier 1 towers being down means they've got a better opportunity to get aggressive around the Fire Giant.
Yeah, and Bobby holding on to that wing gust there so he couldn't be knocked up by the Stingy and Torment from Cerberus. If the spit lands and you're stunned, easy opportunity for a kill there because Inbound did not go for the beats, has the shell available, but saving that knock-up immunity just in case Variety got a little over-aggressive. Smart play by the support. Now, Scream looking over again, trying to kill this very tanky Cerberus.
But that blink just happens at the same time as Variety's ultimate, so he escapes the danger, really buys himself some time. Blink for his ult and Scream's ult, not the worst trade if you're Variety there. However, look at Scarabs, 4 men on this right-hand side now. Trying to make sure the rotation, if it was coming through from Kings, wouldn't be taken. Persephone's a bit far forward in mid lane, though, but luckily Genetics is around. Spirit Ball connects, early ult from Boronic. Boronic's going to be careful, though, because Twig's wrapping around the back, but Scream senses the danger, too. Dropkick into the grasp of death. Boronic's still alive as he pulls the trucker horn. It's not enough for a kill, but Scaredy now wraps around the back, doesn't find the target he's after. Scream and Bobby pinned in an awkward spot, gets a good silence off of the shell to come through. He's going to need that shell soon and gets it on Scream again. Dropkick hits onto Inbound from Twig. Twig will die. No, he won't. The revive comes through to keep him topped up, and Scaredy at half health has to limp away. Great play from the Kings in mid, but Netroid, who rotates in very low, as is Scream, but Scream still alive with the turtle form on the back of the fight. Scaredy now looking for the battle of hell to fight Netroid, who dashes away to safety, and all of that is just one kill.
That was a great team fight by the Camelot Kings, making sure to get everyone involved. All 5 members did make the rotation over. Beautiful Scarabs blessing as well. That drop kick from Twig especially. That was the clutch that made sure that that kill was able to happen. I thought they were all out at that point, but again, Genetics recognizing, hey, we had the die potential because I can just revive you. If this tower is too much, there's no fear there. So Stewart making the nice rotation over, getting Variety's beads, but still no return kill for the Solar Scarabs. At the very least, you kept your tier 2 tower up, but Scream's only level 11
and
here.
Scream doesn't realize there was 3 members around him here on this engagement. He uses the ult early, escapes the root though, which will keep him alive. If he stays stood up this far though, this is kind of dangerous. Inbound and Boronica here, they're trying to strip away this obelisk because they feel it's important, I guess. Now Stewart here too, as is Twig. The fight over the obelisk continues, and Inbound out of position and alone will be a casualty of war caused by Scream getting aggressive there. And Twig ain't done yet. He's going to go in the backline and find Zeus alone. The rest of his team are just running for the hills, leaving him on his own. And Boronic will fall down. It just depends on who it's going to be for. Variety, credit for the kill.
Yeah, I can't figure out why a level 11 Erlong was trying to go for that obelisk there. Maybe they thought everyone was gone, and honestly, if the Grasping Death hits, Scream definitely dies too. He might still find a way to die here, as Variety is going to try to catch him out. Does knock him up, no beads available.
No escape, more importantly here, so even though he's in the jungle and survived for now, the rest of the team are going to collapse on him and find another pick. No Fury available. Tier 1 tower on the left-hand side could go down here now for the Kings with this opportunity. As they strip some of this damage away, Scaredy does find a solo tier 1 tower. And the Scarabs are starting to fall further behind as the Kings are just finding every opportunity to pick apart the Scarabs.
Yeah, they still have some gold in hand at the moment as the Oni Fury spawns. Inbound's going to die if the leap is available, but has the heal to live through it.
Yep, for a few seconds. That's about it, really. I mean, exchange in the mid lane, Bobby surviving is good there, but it does cost him his ultimate. Relic's currently still down for Big Man 6. He did use his beads there, Big Man, funny enough. So in the end, it does probably play into Scarab's favor a little bit.
Yeah, I would say so. At least trading ults is one thing, but getting Persephone's beads down could be a huge avenue for them. I'm just looking at this gold deficit from the jungle, specifically Scream.
Yeah.
3 levels down, opted to go for the Wing Blade, so only real damage online at the moment is that stone cutting sword, so not too much burn from this jungle as well.
I'd argue the biggest issue Scarabs have got so far is getting to the damage dealers on the Kings. For the most part, it's the front line that have absorbed a lot of the damage.
Right.
Or the ones that have eaten the damage from Scaredy rotating in. It's not been Boronic as much as they would have liked it to be. Boronic needs to survive as long as possible. Pick on Variety, though. He is burstable with a Zeus, too. Great little play. Trucker Horn's not enough. They need Scream to follow up with the ultimate, but still Variety alive, and Scream has to commit and continue to commit. But he's not going to get the kill. Scaredy has to blink on it and secure it. Now the backup of Scarabs is here, but watch Netroid coming around the corner. He's got the ultimate available and find great damage onto Boronic, who gets drop kicked into a wall too. Scaredy exit stage left, Inbound 2. And now, with Heimdall running away for his life, the Kings can choose, do we want Gold Fury or do we want to look for the FG? It's probably going to be a Gold Fury at this point. As Bobby and Big Man continue trading, Inbound won't be able to find this kill. He's just buying time.
That was just way too overcommitting to try to kill Variety. They think they have the damage for it, but the Oni Hunter's Garb, double Fizzdy, just way too much. And even so, I think Genetics accidentally Scarabs blessing the wrong target. That's the only reason they found 1 kill there. The Kings just showing how dominant they are right now in this match specifically.
What's the situation there in mid lane, though? Because you see the pick attempt towards Variety there. A lot of damage, but a lot consumed. Do you dive a Scream and Scary to secure that kill? Are you trying to make it worthwhile? But in doing so, you put yourselves overextended.
Yeah, I think you have to. You just put way too much damage into that
just
kill
give
to
it
let it drop. But at that point, yeah, if you give it up, you can't defend the Gold Fury anyways. You're so far behind. You use all these ults. So I think no matter what, you were going to lose that Gold Fury. So trying to get the kill and waste some ultimates was the play. But now Pyromancer and Fire Giant are up, and the Camelot Kings 5 strong. They don't even want the objective. They're looking for Scream.
Well, especially with the Oni minions now pushing too here, Trolley. It's just going to open the map up a little bit more for them to keep their focus around the FG. Pyromancer falls. And Kings on the hunt, trying to wait for these minions to maybe pressure down this right-hand side, that left-hand side too, and get vision on the Scarabs in the jungle. Some deep wards down as well from the side of the Kings, just to keep good vision of this and keep them turtled at this tier 2 tower.
Yeah, it seems like Inbound is trying to find some form of CC to set up something for his squad, but really no kill potential at the moment. If I'm, Scream is farming, and that's the idea right now. You're still have a level 14 jungle. Trying to position for this tier 2 tower, not the best option. Variety wrapping around from behind.
Yeah, with these Oni minions coming in too is going to cause more problems. Tier 2 will fall before an FG even contested here. Big ult from Variety though, catches Inbound and pulls him into danger. Great abduct after the fact, good CC chain. And now with Twig down for the dropkick, gets beads out of Stu, tell a lie. I believe he slipped away from that just in time. But with a 1 member down, the Kings now are able to limp back towards the FG in pretty good standards here to look to assault it.
Yeah, they have a level 19 Persephone 4 confirm. 4 levels over Baronic, by the way, so I think this one will be pretty free. It looks like Scary D might try to make some magic happen with that stun. No, he's dead.
Didn't even get his ultimate off there, by the way, just to be clear, the amount of damage that came through. Now a 3-on-5, FG going to go down. 3:20 minutes here. Kings are in good command of this game and have been since the early on. That first kill on towards Inbound in that dual lane just seems to have changed the pace and changed the pressure that we saw at our Scarabs in Game 1 and Game 2.
Yeah, I think recognizing that there's only 3 members on the map that can really defend at the moment, because you see Stewart on the left confirming, you see that Scream is farming as well. This Phoenix is going to be free here.
Yeah, nobody's back to defend at all. Minions are here too. Right-hand Phoenix falls down. And what do the Scarabs get by doing that? A purple buff and a tier 1 tower? Well, not the best case scenario if you're the Scarabs there. At the end of the day, could you have defended that Phoenix is the question.
Probably not. If Scary D doesn't die, maybe you have a shot here. I mean, it is very early on for a Phoenix siege, but given the numbers and the gold advantage, I would say the Camelot Kings aren't worried about too much at all. They had the Oni minion pressure from that Fire Giant anyway, so all the minions were pushed way far back. If the Scarabs do defend, they're losing farm in theory, so they just said, hey, we're going to go for some stuff on the left, but a tier 1 tower, not a great consolation prize.
Not really. Only 4 deaths on the side of the King so far. Majority, again, swinging towards that solo lane. But it's not the people you want to die. Honestly, look at the carries the Kings. Still undying in this game. Stewart, just to mention him, has gone undying, but he's not been able to do much in this game. Player damage below the Erlang Shen with how this game's gone, but uninvolved in any of the plays so far on this Heimdall. With the build he's got, though, hopefully the next team fight, you can try and make something happen. Because if nothing happens soon, the Kings are just going to continue to mount the pressure, take down these tier 2s, and, well, be in a situation where Scarabs are right on the back foot.
Yeah, I just don't see Erlang being able to help this fight at all. Scream, 3 items online to Twig's 4.5, probably pretty close to getting that Bumba's Hammer as well. You have to worry about fire minions and right. The Kings may just wait for those to push in as the last tier 2 tower finally goes down. Camelot Kings in a very commanding position at the moment. Only Stewart really has the damage to try and back this up.
Very telegraphed composition from Kings, though. It's Variety jumping in more than anybody else here. Then with Twig following up maybe with a blink. But it's very telegraphed to know when the Kings are going to go this time round. What can they do? Well, Variety doesn't even have to leap in. He just walks in here, finds Inbound, but a great wing gust will avoid the ultimate out of Variety there, thanks to the knock-up immunity. But the threat hasn't dwindled away just yet. In goes Scream, trying to cause an issue. Grasp of Death grabs him as Stewart looks to the backside to try and find a kill. Kings back away, though, just to make sure they've got wiggle room to absorb some damage. The health bar starting to dwindle now on the Scarabs as a lot of ultimates exhumed to try and reduce the amount of damage the Phoenix is taken. But the Phoenix will fall, and now Inbound pulled in with the Abduct. No focus on him, though, as Netroid chose a different target on Scream. And now Netroid bit off more than he can chew, but gets a good ultimate out of genetics to keep him topped up. Everybody's still alive, but it won't be for long as both Twig and Netroid end up falling down there. Jump in from Twig, though, gets him a double. Should I say, gonna go the way of Big Man Tings too. And that is gonna be the end of the game, because Stewart on his own on the backside cannot keep himself alive. and stop the Kings from taking game 3. It's going to go 2-1, 5-20 in just under 22 minutes. The Kings find the victory.
Well, not all the carries are going to go undying for the Camelot Kings, but BMT 6-0 on that Persephone with the triple kill to round that one out. Just superior team fight play, superior map play. Pretty much since the end of Game 2 to the end of Game 3. The Kings looked on fire since that point.
They're looking good in Game 1 for the Kings. They woke up a little bit, lazily out of bed this morning, I guess, but then they did bounce back in Game 2 and 3. I do look back at Game 2, though, and I look at Scarabs' draft there and go, I felt they were trying to run away with it too much.
Yeah.
They put a lot of pressure on themselves there to close out, almost make a stamp onto Kings of like, hey, we can do you like this.
Right.
Didn't pay off, though, and now Kings are able to bounce back and find this victory.
Yeah, I think the comp in Game 2, as you said, just didn't work out. In this game, even though with a normal-sized comp, it wasn't able to work out. Superior map play and team play by the Camelot Kings.
We'll say Scarabs look better this season than they did last, and there's still room to grow for everybody in the SPL this year. That's it for this one, though. We'll be back to break down that series after this break.
Kings come out on top in Game 3 to win the set 2-1 here over the Solar Scarabs. But unlike Games 1 and 2, where the Scarabs had control for pretty much the entire start of the game, and maybe even up until the end in the case of Game number 1, Camelot Kings held control of the game here in Game number 3 for pretty much the entirety of it. A complete reversal of what we've seen out of them here in the third matchup. It's J-Mac and Mifflin here one more time on the desk to close out this set and time to talk about that one. But there's not much to talk about. I mean, Captain Twig got off to a tear early on into the game. I think like 8-1. Big Man Tings relatively unchecked in that mid lane as well.
Yeah, this whole set really felt like the Camelot Kings progressively completing their download of the Solar Scarabs. Game 1, you just connected to the server for the first time. You're like 2%. You don't really know exactly what's going on. Game 2, we were like 60% through. So some slight stumbles in the early. And then Game 3, download was already complete. They'd already read the playbook. They know everything that's going to happen. And we're able to control it from minute 1 to minute done. The Camelot Kings are a team that have been hailed as the best at macro farming in the league. But in Game 3, they seemed to get down in the dirt with them. They got involved on the map and still kept up that macro farm. It was just dominance the entire way through.
I mean, Captain Twig on this Gilgamesh, a completely different look than what we saw out of the Nemesis and the Habwa earlier on to the set. And Big Man Tings, again, getting to kind of just free cast here in this mid lane on this Persephone, ending with an undefeated record, at least in game number 3 here. And a lot of that, and going back to genetics here, it's a stat I didn't get a chance to pull up right at the tail end of the pre-game, or the pre-death segment for this one. But in Season 8, a 75% win rate on this Khepri here for the Camelot Kings. So it's no wonder that we're seeing this god consistently banned away from genetics.
I mean, it's just a straight-up good pick. If we want to just talk about Khepri in a vacuum, it's pretty good. Put it on a guy that can consistently find these like last frame revives. Probably going to make it a little bit better as well. Genetics certainly makes his stamp known on the Khepri, and wouldn't be surprised if it's a little while till we get to see it again.
I mean, that's 0-1 and 17. That's one of the higher assist columns that we've seen in quite some time
it's
here.
Like 2 more than 15.
Over in the SPL. That is 2 more than 15. It's also 2 less than 19.
Sure
so
is.
Not quite there to that one. I don't know where we're going with that a little bit at all there. But
I was stating a fact.
I mean, I was stating one right back with you. So it's a nice little combo here. Big Man Tings 21 at nearly 22,000 damage here in game number 3. And only 6K damage taken compared to, that's half the damage taken that the next person on his team got there, and that was Netroid at that 12K mark. I mean, when you want to talk about a mid laner feeling safe, that is your picture-perfect definition.
And what happens when you feel that safe? You put up 21,000. Big Man Tings has a great performance. Looks pretty good on my fantasy team.
Does look pretty good on the fantasy team. And those of you who have maybe genetics on your fantasy team, we can talk to him and kind of talk a little bit about the greatness that he had here in at least this last game. Before we get to the last game, genetics, talk to me a little bit about that first game there, a bit of a stumble up against the Solar Scarabs. I mean, what was kind of the mental and talk about, you know, to try and bounce back in game 2?
Oh, honestly, I can't remember the first game that well. I think we just decided to just reset because it didn't really feel like a game for us. There's just some games in SMITE where you don't really feel like you got to play the game, and they kind of just decided everything. We were like, well, let's try and play the game a little bit and see if we can get our own style in there rather than just running around following them everywhere, and then we just changed it.
Yeah, I mean, kind of going back into Season 8, one thing that was talked a lot about was, you know, your expansive God pool. I mean, there were some games where there was 5-6 bans even dedicated to you, and so far consistently this season, this Khepri seems to be the one that teams really don't want you to get back on. I mean, how does it feel having, you know, it's such a successful God that nobody wants you to play it?
Well, I'm just the best Khepri. I don't know, we just win on Khepri a lot. I've got the best carries in the league by far. I've got a very good jungler who knows spacing, and I've got the best soul inner, so Khepri just cements our team in really well.
Yeah, worked well for you here in game number 3. Works well for you all so far in the past. Congratulations on your win. I'll let you get back with the team to celebrate.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Genetics.
A lot of confidence there, too.
Oh,
I've got
he gave me the horns, or whatever this is called.
Yeah.
The Hang 10.
Hang 10, man.
Yeah, very chill.
I like the confidence coming out of him. You know, best Khepri in the league, also some of the best carries in the league, a jungler who really knows how to control his spacing, and that's something that we always talk about with these kind of teams that like to play these more control-oriented when we get to these map presences. And it's also something we talk about with similar teams like the Titans, where Paul and Cyclone really don't ever have to worry about too much. Shinto, Zapman, same conversation on the side of Leviathans. The Camelot Kings coming out here and with their support having that to say about them shows a lot for this team.
Yeah, and I'm now concerned. Like, if he's got the best front line and the best back line, I mean, if we're to trust him, the rest of the league, it might just be curtains for him.
Yeah, everybody's going to have to keep watch here on the Camelot Kings. But let's take a look at the schedule and see what we still have for the rest of our week here over in the SPL. With our first game done, the Camelot Kings finding their victory. That will now lead us into our second set of the day. That'll be the Jade Dragons up against the Oni Warriors. Both these teams sitting at a 1-1 record. Jade Dragons got a 2-0 over the Scarabs last week and then got 2-0'd by the Titans. Oni Warriors went the full distance in both of theirs. And the one win that they did get was over that Atlantis Leviathan team, the first team out here in the SPL to make the Leviathans bleed since their Worlds run.
Yeah, this set might be my personal favorite for the week because I think it's going to be a great heat check for the Oni Warriors, whether or not they're going to be able to maintain that consistent level of play that we saw them bring up against the Leviathans. Get to check in with the Jade Dragons, a fan favorite, see whether or not they're able to put a stopper to this hot streak, one set hot streak for the Oni Warriors. Either way, I think at the end of the day, all the fans are going to get a win.
Yeah, taking a look at the standings here, Camelot Kings are their win. They'll, for now, sit at the top of the bracket here. Right behind them will be the Tartarus Titans in 2. And now we can start to see that 1-5 second place tie now starting to slowly change itself up here as only a couple of teams are tied on their way. Solo Scarabs down into the 7th place spot now with only a 1-2 record for themselves. But going back and talking about this next setup here, I mean, the Oni Warriors and the Jade Dragons, it's one that we're going to be talking a lot about as the game is going through, and it's one that's going to have a lot of discussion as that game is playing through, especially through that jungle, I imagine. You know, Sanford Soccer versus Cuvo Fred is going to be a very big hit between these teams.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what version of Sanford Soccer we get, whether or not he's going to bring that contrarian jungler who just plays whatever everyone else isn't playing, whether or not Cuvo Fred has expanded his god pool to fit some of these more meta selections, or whether or not he's decided to go the generalized Oni Warriors path with his more eclectic picks. Very curious to see how this one pans out. I think a lot of it might also just come down to that duo lane. Seems like both squads really do like to play through that duo, namely Neoma and PBM. I don't know. That sounds pretty fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a very nice matchup here for our second set of the day. But before we get to that set, we are going to take it to a quick break. So make sure that you go ahead and use the restroom, get your snacks and whatnot. We'll be back in just a few minutes with our second set of the day.